Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the School Manager Part 11. In this week, I'm going to show you how to create this incredible dynamic day view scheduler. Each lesson can show unlimited types of labels and values, customizable completely. We're also going to show you how to filter between students, teachers, rooms, subjects, and view by whether it's teacher, room, or class type. We've got a lot to cover. I cannot wait. Let's get started. Welcome back to part 11. Thanks so much for sticking with me on this amazing, incredible application we are building. I'm going to build this for you from scratch. This is just the sample. We're going to go over every step, every formula, every line of code, every conditional formatting. We're going to show you how to do it, but today we're going to take on the schedule. In fact, it's going to be a multi-part. The scheduler is massive. We're going to have day view, week view, month view. I've got so many ideas. It's going to look something like this. This is a sample. We're going to be able to select or unselect what we want to show in this particular, let's say, class pop-up detail. We're going to be able to show. We'll also be able to show what we want. Do we want to show all students? Do you want to show all teachers or all rooms? Or maybe we just want to show a specific teacher, or maybe a specific student, or maybe we want to show a specific subject or a specific class type. We've got a lot to do, So where do we come up with this schedule? I'm going to close this one out. We're not going to work on this, and then we're going to go into the new one. But before I get to that, I want to make sure that you get notified every week for these free trainings. The best way to do that is to click on the subscription button below, and don't forget to click on the notification icon bell. That will ensure that you get these lessons each and every week. Another great way to help is comment below. I respond to each and every comment. So whether you have a question, a comment, you want to have it specific, let me know. I'm going to be responding every single day. I do that. And I bring these to you free each and every week. If you want to help support us, a great way to do that is with our mentorship program. In this mentorship program, I'm designing an incredible accounting application complete with invoicing and payments, customers, inventory, a full dashboard, sharing and sync. It's an incredible. I'm going to show you how to define, design, develop, and deploy your own Excel-based applications for passive income so that you can turn your passion for Excel into really passive income. And that's my goal. So that is with the mentorship program. You can get it there by going to myexcelmentor.com, myexcelmentor.com for all the details. All right, let's get right into it. We've got so much to cover. So the best way to do is this is what we're looking at right here on the scheduling. We've got a completely blank sheet. We've got a lot of work to do. But before we just start designing and doing everything, we always want to write down what do we want, especially for a screen like this. I've been taking your ideas, your comments, your suggestions, and I put them all together, and let's go over what we want before we start developing, before we do anything with this scheduling. We always want to take a look at what we have. So I just have some notes here, and we're going to go over those notes with you. So basically, I want to have a day view, a week view, and a month view. So I know that I want to have three parts to that. So that's important. So all schedules, we're going to have a day view, week view. I want to be able to use this to click and see a full day or a full week. Now the day view, we're going to be able to show a lot more detail. The week view, a little bit less. And obviously the month view, even less detail. But I also want to be able to drag and drop scheduling and to move lessons, right? I want to drag it from one teacher to another or from one time to another. I also want to have drag down and drag up. What do I mean by that? When I drag down a specific lesson, it'll increase the time for that lesson. When I drag it up, it'll decrease the lesson. So by dragging maybe one of the bottom or the top type of half, I want to be able to reduce. So if I want to take a 2-hour lesson and reduce it down to an hour and a half, then I just simply drag it up. Or I can select it and change the time. I also want to be able to select on something and change all the properties from that for that specific lesson, not the entire class, but that specific lesson. I want to have previous and next navigation buttons, regardless whether it's for previous day or next day, previous week next week, or previous month next week. I want to have that for each and every. So this will be for all of those types of schedules. So regardless whether it's day, week, or month, that's what I want to have. I also want to have start and end times based on the school start time. So when we have that start time for the schedule, which you just saw in the sample, that's going to be based on the school start time. Remember, in our admin screen here, we already have an start screen here, start time here, 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. So we've got that set up already. So I want to base that schedule based on those times there. All right, so what else do I want? I want to have conditional formatting based on the company work days. Perhaps we're going to use company conditional formatting. So we want to hide non-company work days. If it's in a week view, maybe I don't want to hide the Wednesday or Thursday, but if it's it's in a full month view, maybe we want to use some type of conditional formatting to not show. If they're not working Sundays, I want to use some conditional formatting to show that. And if it's day view, I just want them skipped. So for a day view, so for example, if we're navigating from Monday through Friday and we get to Friday and we go next, it's going to automatically skip Saturday and Sunday because those aren't work days. So I want to do that. Also, displaying school holidays with either shapes or conditional formatting. If it's a holiday, I want to display that, right? I want to show it on the schedule, and our holidays are going to be here. We'll have a holiday name, a from date, and to date. So if there's a holiday name, I want to display what holiday is on that so the users can see it. So I think that would be very important. We can see that, and that would be regardless, again, on the day, week, or month view. I want to have expandable, possibly expandable class shapes. So when I click on a class, it expands to show more detail. Now, when I select on it, it's also going to show detail in another panel. Now, I also want a single click lesson to display or update the details. I want to view all the enrolled students. I want to set the attendance type for the selected students. I want to be able to select specific students and then set the attendance type, whether they're present or, remember, we've got a set of attendance types. So what I want to do is I want to have a drop down list of attendance types. Here's our attendance types. So I want to have a drop-down list of those and be able to set attendance types for those specific students. So we want to do that. It's a tall order. We've got a lot to cover on this. I also want to show, maybe, I'm not sure about this, show attendance status via wingdings. Maybe not on this because we have so many different, if we have two different attendance types, if I had present and absence, then maybe fine, we could show an icon. But we've opened it up to show multiple attendance, so maybe we won't do the icon for the attendance. That was just an idea. Assign, I want this assign exams, tests, quizzes, or assignments for enrolled, or let's just put selected students. Selected students. So maybe we don't want to assign the exam for all, but we want to assign an exam or an assignment for selected students. So we can do that there. Also, we want to assign grades and scores to the specific exams and tests. I want to do that. I want to set a teacher attendance with a time clock. I want to be able to set the time that the teacher comes in and out so we can track their time when it comes to payroll. I want to assign a specific substitute teacher if that teacher didn't make it in for that specific lesson. I want to be able to change the teacher for a specific lesson. View or change the assigned room location. I want to also be able to move it to another room by dragging and dropping, or simply just setting it. And also the start time and duration, I want to make sure that those are updatable. An icon, I want to click an icon on the class so we can actually go to the actual class and make the updates. Last week, we went to the class. So from the schedule, I want to be able to click here and go to that specific class. So let's say you want to make a global change to the class, not just for a specific lesson, but for the entire class. I want to be able to do that. So maybe we want to change the subject, or maybe we want to change the class type or something like that. So I want to go from the schedule and go directly to this. So basically, if we have a class ID, we'll just enter that class ID and do that here. Okay, so I want to do that. Also, I want dynamic filtering, right? If I want to display maybe a week schedule for just a student or just a specific teacher. So you saw that in the sample a little bit. It was kind of halfway working, although we still have a lot of work to do on it. But basically, I want to filter. I want to show one specific room or one specific teacher or all students or one specific subject. So I want to be able to do that. So we got dynamic filtering, and also want to have customizable lesson details. You saw that pop-up, that shape. It shows a lot of information about the lesson. But I want the user to customize it. I want them to be able to customize the label. I want them to be able to customize the whether they're going to show the data or not. So maybe it's going to say teacher, and then the teacher, or maybe we just don't want to show the word teacher. So I want that completely customizable. And I want to be able to show for all these items. So that's going to be important. Okay, so that's for all of them, regardless if it's day or week. Now, specifically on the day view feature, I want to have a selection, a pop-up calendar to select which day. I want to have time and column intervals. So I want to show the time. On day view, we can show the time. Week view, we can, but month view, we won't be showing the time. So we'll just be showing general. I want to skip non-school days, right? If it's not a school day, if we're not have a school day again on Saturday or Sunday, when we're on Friday and we go next, it's going to skip all the way to Monday. I like that idea. However, holidays won't be skipped, but it will show it as a holiday. So that's nice. We wouldn't want to know why it's a holiday. So we'll show the holidays, but we won't be able to schedule on. And again, view by assigned teacher, room or location or class type. We're going to have a view that. So that means if I want to view all the teachers for a specific day or only the rooms for a specific day or the class types. And then in the week view, I want to have a selection of, again, pop-up calendar, select a specific week, start weekday. So we know that's based on the admin settings, right? That weekday is going to be starting based on the admin here. So when we know that on the classes, let's say scheduling here, we know that our weekday starts on Monday. I want to make sure that week view starts on whatever day that user has selected here. So we've got that to cover. Also, I want to make sure the time column has based on the intervals, right? So we're going to have a starting time based on whatever time. We're going to have the intervals based on whatever we've set here. So that's going to be important for both the day view and the week view based on those schedules. And again, we're going to exclude non-school days on the week view. In the month view, we're going to have a year drop-down list, a drop month, and a year drop-down. So we'll show the month, like all 12 months, along with a year drop-down list to be able to quickly select specific months. And then no time columns. We don't have that. And then we're going to use shape or conditional formatting for holidays. Probably going to be a shape that covers the entire day and then displays the holiday name. And then we're going to use shapes or conditional formatting to display the non-school days. So that's what I want to do. So now you've got a good idea of what we're going to try to accompany all that inside the scheduling screen. All right, so let's get started with that. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, obviously every single screen is going to have this menu. So I'm just going to copy that, the one we have here in the admin. And I'm going to go into the scheduling screen. I'm going to paste that in. And we're going to paste that right in column C. I'm probably going to put it in a different column this time because I want a few more columns. So inside the scheduling screen here, I'm going to bring this over a little bit closer here. I'm going to put that inside column E. So because I want to keep a few rows. Okay, so that's good. So we got that. Now all I need to do, but again, I want to customize this one here. I want to make sure that we're just going to drag. I'm going to keep that top row over. And we're going to call that the scheduling, but I'm just going to use shapes again on that. So we're going to bring that way over. We're going to use a lot of columns on this one because we've got a lot to do. So we've got a dashboard here. Let's set up the menu. These are the columns that I'm going to use for the admin. I'm going to use a lot this time because we've got the scheduling screen is really a big a lot of things going on there. All right, so I'm going to drop this down. And then what we want to do is I want to, again, just like we've done in the past, reset this one. So we're going to format this. And then the shape fields are going to go back to the original black color. We're going to set that text here back to the white and non-bold. So it's going to be back to where it was. And then also we want the admin, right? We want the white admin icon. So I'm going to remove this one. We don't need that one. And we want to make sure that we put the scheduling, which I have. I'm going to open that up. I've got a scheduling blue one. So I'm going to add that one right now. That's going to be located right in here. So I've got that here. I'm going to use that one. That's our scheduling icon in blue. You know, we double check the size. We want to make sure the size is the same as before, 0.2. That's what we're going to set it at, 0.2. Okay, good. So we'll just bring that over there and we can remove the white one. Again, let's then customize this. It's going to be our shape fill of white. We want that font in this case, which is our selected, going to be that blue color here that they're commonly using, and then we're going to make it bold. And then we're going to bring this icon right in here. I want to change the name of this icon. I want to make sure that that's set to schedule. So just do that because when we click on it, we're going to make sure that we do that. And all we need to do is get that admin so we can go into any other one and just grab it from here. Let's go into the teachers. I'm going to copy that back into the schedule and then paste it right here. Then all we need to do is ungroup and regroup it. So again, let's ungroup it here. I'm going to ungroup that. And we'll call it menu again. So I just want to make sure that all the icons are lined up. So I'm going to do it right here. Line those up just the way I would like it there. And then, all right, that looks good. So then I'm going to over everything. Then I'm going to group it again. Going to call this menu, give it a name. Right click and want to make sure that in this case, we probably could size it with it, but we'll keep it consistent. This case, because move but don't size with cells, that's fine. Here, and so here we have our menu, and then I want to assign the macro to it. That's important because there are parts of it that don't have it assigned. So we're going to assign the macro to the entire group. So we're going to just do menu, go to sheet, click OK. That's going to assign the menu. So now we click admin, it's going to go back to admin. We go to schedule, it's going to go back to schedule. Okay, perfect. We've got that working good. Now let's continue on. What else do we want to develop with this? I'm going to bring this out here so it's even. I also need a header on here, so why don't we just go into another one. We'll just copy this header here and then go back into the schedule and paste it here. I'll make it a little bit smaller though. I don't want it quite as big. We can ungroup it as well, and I'll add a different type of icon on here because this one is going to take up a lot of space, so we don't have so much space. So let's bring down this to about just 20, and then we may eventually do away with this header altogether, this specific header, because we may not need it in the future. So school manager here, we'll just put that there because I'll add a lot of other stuff to that. And I also want to take have a specific icon here. I'm going to use a white icon. So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to borrow this white icon here, and then I'm going to go back into the schedule and I'm going to paste it up here. So we have that there. So, okay, so now I'll bring it up here, and we can use this icon. That's going to be this header will be fine for now. And then we've got a lot of other stuff to add. So what else do we want to add to this? Well, I'm going to also increase this. I'm going to have a larger header than we do because we're going to add a lot of stuff there. I also want to put some buttons on here. I want to organize things in a way that we can easily use them. So the first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to add here, what do we want here? I want to put some type of details, lesson details in here so that we can easily see them. So if we can display them and we can customize them, it's going to be easier. So what kind of lesson details? So here I want to put in here data and then label and then maybe a label value here. So because I want to know if we're going to display certain things inside that lesson. In other words, when we have that shape, what do we want to display inside that shape? I want to display a list of things. And here we can put something like view lesson details. I also want to have a button here that's going to hide that. So this area here is going to be completely, I'll just merge instead of this. I'm going to make it black here because I want a button at the top here, and I'll make it this traditional black color here that we've been using. And then also, again, I want to use this here as our specific, we'll use it as our underline. So we've got to format those cells. And then we use the cell styles. We'll use this table header here because that's the one we want. Okay, so we want data label here, and then we're going to put view lesson details. I'll do it here. It's in black, so let's rewrite that and put that in white so we can see it and make it bold. Okay, so there we go. So I'll have put a button up here, and then I'll put some borders around here. So I want to be able to open this and view those lesson details here. And I also want another one. So I'm going to copy this here. I'm going to copy all of it, and then we'll just remove one of the columns here because we only need 2 columns for this one. In this one, what I want to have is I want to have simply, let's clear out this last column here. I want to have, this one's going to be called set filters in view. So I want to be able to set those filters, and the view, so we can filter out certain and specific lessons so that we can have only teachers or only a specific student or a specific teacher or a specific room, subject, or class type. So we're going to have that here. We're going to call this probably, let's say we'll have under here, maybe we'll put in like something like subject, student here. We want to filter by student. We want to filter by teacher, room, and class. Subject, we want subject. Also I want class type. And then down here I want to set the view, set view by. So what is that view going to be? View by, and then we're going to put something like a teacher. I'll just put a teacher, student, because I want to know what the view by. Maybe we want rooms up here at the top. Maybe we want teachers up there at the top, or maybe we want something like a class type, right? So I want to know what we want. So we'll put a drop down list here. And that's going to go into column J. So then in this we would have a drop down list saying all students, and then we'd select all students or specific student, all teachers, or specific all rooms. You get the idea here. And then in this case, we're going to shrink these up. I'm going to have check boxes on these. These 2 are going to be a checkbox, so we'll be able to select it. Select if we want that data to appear inside the class shape, or select if we want that label to appear inside the shape, and so on and so forth. So we have a list of those. Let's put it up. I have a list of exactly what I want to go, and I'm going to pull it up from right here. This is what I want to show inside that. So I might as well just copy that. I can copy that straight from OneNote and place it right in here into my label. So that's, we're going to have that there and put that in here. We'll call this label value. I'm going to call this label value because it's the value of the label, or the label text. Label text, maybe it's like that. And then so we're going to have that label text in there, so we can put, so if I select here, it's going to display the class name. If I select here, it's going to display the class name label, and here's the label. So we can put some conditional formatting in here, and then in here we'll put down there. I also want to know what the lesson details are. Here I'm going to put in lesson details. Lesson details, that's going to go in column K, and then I'm going to put in, I want to know the room. What room is that lesson? So when I select a lesson here on the schedule, I want all this information to populate based on the selected lesson. Then we can make updates. We can change the room, we can change the teacher, the start time. So beyond room, I want teacher. So we want to know because, and then I want to know if we're going to add a specific exam. We're going to change that conditional formatting. That formatting, that's not going to be correct. Add exam for the selected student, for selected, let's say, students, right? So then we're going to be able to select those students. And I also want to set the attendance, for selected students. So down here, what we'll have is a checkbox here, and then I'm going to put enrolled students. So I want those students, when I select a class, I want all those enrolled students to appear down here. Enrolled students. And then what I want to have is if they attended, what is their attendance status, right? Are they present or not? And then I want to know the score based on a selected test or exam. What is the score of that? So we can put score letter. So we have that, and then here's going to go a checkbox here. Then this one is not going to be, I'm going to format these here in this gray here. Let's pull this out. So this is all going to be our standard gray color that we've been using in the background here. And then we'll change the font to this black here. Okay, so what I want here, so basically login details, I'm going to merge and center this one because that's going to be, we won't need that. And then what I want to put is a little bit of a label, start and then end, because I want to know what time the class starts and what time the class ends. I may want to edit that, right? I may want to change this specific, I shouldn't say class, I should say lesson, because a class is the entire, all the lessons combined, while this specific lesson might have a different start and end time, right? Just for this one. So we may want to edit that here, and we can also edit it by dragging and dropping too. So I want to put the room here, so we're going to expand this, because that's the room's going to go on there, actually just this column here, L. And then what I want to start and end time. So we can put something like, let's just put in a time just so we can keep things accurate. We know what there. So 7 a.m. and then let's say it ends at 9 a.m. And then also I want to put the teacher. When did the teacher sign in, right? Maybe the teacher signed in at 6:50 a.m. So we're going to put in some times there just so we can get an idea of what it is for. And they left it, let's say 9:15, 9:15. So we'd be able to track the teachers as well, which is really helpful. Also, I want to have a drop-down list of all the active teachers here so that we can select from a specific teacher. So why don't we add that now, because we have that list. Data validation, and then we'll choose the list. And then what I'm going to do is all teachers. So if we want to know, we'll use F3 to find that list. And we type in teacher, we have full name list, and we have full name sorted. We'll go with the sorted names. So that way we can simply just select from a specific teacher and have that teacher change. So when we select a lesson, whatever assigned teacher will show up here, and then we can change it individually. The room, so we'll put in a room. Obviously we want a down list of rooms. So let's go ahead and add some data validation into that as well. Also a list. And based on, I think we have the rooms already here, probably just called rooms, I believe. Rooms, and that's it. That's all we need to do. Okay, so we've got to select rooms, so that way we can change rooms from here. And then also we want the attendance, and we also want a student, so the enrolled student. So we have some students here. Let's just copy those. Let's go to the student list or the student database. That should be fine. And we'll copy some of those lists. I'm going to copy the full names just so we can get an idea of here. So I'll just copy these so we can get, and then we can add some conditional formatting in there as well. So our scheduling is really starting to come to life right now. So it's getting a lot bigger. As you can see, this application's got a lot of sheets now. And I'm going to paste those starting in number 8 here. I'm going to paste those students in here. Okay, so here what I want is a checkbox, and I want to select all. So I'm going to insert just a symbol here, and this will be, we'll be making this on, so we can select all and then close that. And then what I do is I want to, let's raise that, let's bring that up a little bit more. But that's too much. If you don't want, I don't want to increase the font. Also, these rows are going to be, these rows are a little bit too big, right? Too wide, too high. I want to reduce them a bit, because basically I want to put in as many schedules. So right now it's about, let's see, 15. 15 should be fine. Okay, we may go a little bit lower, smaller, but we'll see about that. 15 should be okay for now. So basically what I want to do is I want to be able to select all or select none. It's just by selecting on that, and we can bring that down. And this, what we're going to do is we're going to merge and center this, merge and center this so that we can see that, and then we'll bring it out. And then also I'm going to left justify it and bring it out. So that way we can get a good idea. So here we're going to have the exam, selected exams, and we're going to have the selected students. Set attendance, we have attendance types. I believe we have that as well. Let's take a look at that inside the data validation. We can set that up, and then of course list, and then just F3, I think it's called attendance status here. That's what I want to put in here. So basically the idea is once you set present, you select all the students, then you click present, and then we'll have a little button here that says set, and then it's going to set the attendance for all those selected students. We'll be able to select all or select none from here. So we'll make this bold here, and then we'll give it that same background color. All right, it's starting to shape up and look really nice here. So that's what I have. I'll just put some borders all the way around here. We'll add some conditional formatting, and then we'll update the borders accordingly as with this, basically considering with our system here. Okay, good. So now we've got some nice ideas. So let's add some dotted lines because it's basically going to be for that specific field on the left side here, because that's pertaining to. Okay, so we'll increase this so we can see all the text. And so we have add exam for selected students. I'll have a drop down list of exams, and then we'll be able to set for submit, and we'll add some conditional formatting onto here as well. All right, let's continue with some of our formatting. I'm going to bring these down to the bottom because we're going to put buttons down at the top there. And let's merge and center this one as we did with the top one. Okay, so then what I'm going to have is just some borders here. We'll use white borders on this one so that we can see them clearly against the black. So what we'll do is we'll just go to black, and then what I want is this double border, and then I'm going to change it to white, and then I'm going to put that double border on the left and the middle, although you can't see it, and the right side. And then I'll put the solid border here on the top, although you can't see it, it's white, but that'll look good. Okay, so that's good. All right, so let's just add this white border all the way down, and we'll go down to about probably, I want to add at least, let's say 100. So we'll go down to, let's say 102 here, starting at this, probably this is where my format's going to begin. That way it'll give us a good 100, and then I'll hold up here. So then I'm going to format those cells here, and we'll put that double white border, which is actually here on the left and the right side there, and click OK. All right, you can't see it now, but it's looking good. So I'm going to add in, first I'm going to add in our gray background to this all, and then we'll just go ahead and update that accordingly. Okay, so we've got our this. I'm going to add some conditional formatting. Actually, this is a fixed list, so we don't add conditional formatting. This list won't change. So I'm going to add just some formatting onto that. It is conditional formatting based on odd even, but it won't be based on the data that's in here. So we'll go into new rule, and I'm going to use a formula, and we could just use mod for that. So this is going to be for the even rows. And even rows, I'm just going to give it a fill here, a little bit lighter here, and then I'll give it a border around there. So I'll do a black border all the way around, and then click OK. And then I'll click OK. And then what I want to do is I want to add a new one for the odd rows. So new rule, and then we're just going to go into the odd rows, and then just give it a bit of a different color here. So that's going to be mod equals 1 for the odd rows. And give it that same black border all the way around, but the fill is going to be, we went with this, and in this case we're going to go more colors. We'll do a little bit lighter like this one, an accent color, so we can contrast those. Okay, I like that. That looks pretty good. We could go with a little bit darker, but we get an idea of what we're working with there. And basically what I want to have is these fonts here, this data label font here. I'm going to have this wingdings because I'm going to be putting in checkbox. So let's do that here. Change this to wingdings. And I want to insert a specific symbol on here. I'm going to insert that checkbox here, and I'm going to copy that down. So, and then we're going to put close. Okay. So for everything but the class icon, we're going to basically show it inside the shape. The class icon will also show inside, but I'll put that on the lower right. So I'm just going to paste those values here. So we're going to leave them all checked, and then I'm going to center them here. Okay. So that's going to let us, so basically we'll be able to select if we want to display the data, we want to actually display the start time, all we need to do is select here. If I want to display the word start time, I can click here. But if I want to change what that label is going to do, it's going to say start, right, and duration. So I can just put in teacher, right? So I can change that, and then it'll be changed on the label. That way it gives the end user the ability to show exactly what they want inside those shapes. And also in this one, we're going to add some additional filtering. So we want to add some, let's go ahead and merge and center this one. And then we'll give that cell style, which is our table header here. And then in this specific one, I also want to add in some borders. So we're going to format those cells here because this is where the user is going to actually in. We're going to do, let's say, border all the way around. And let's just do the inside border black. So let's do black, and then not the double one, this one here. That's the one I want. And then we can do this dotted line on the left. Okay, good. So that's what I want here. So I want to actually basically also format this. This is going to be white. The user is going to be able to enter that. So we need to instruct them to enter that. And then I'll put that border on this one. We'll do a double black border on this one. I think black will look a little bit better on this one. So we'll go with that throughout. So the white border looks good against the black. So we'll update those borders here. So basically what we want to do, we can just put in temporarily. I want to put in, so we know we can put in something like all students. So we want to know, or we'll select from a drop down list. So we have to create a brand new drop down list. So basically include all the teachers except, and we also want an item called all teachers or all students. So we're going to be adding to that today as well. So then again, all rooms, and then all subjects. So we get the point. And then all subjects. So we'll be creating more named ranges, dynamic named ranges to help us with that. And then all types, we'll just put all types. Okay, great. So we have that, and that's going to really help us to customize it. View by, again, we're going to also color this in white here because I want to be able to view by. I'll just bring this over, I'll highlight it, and we'll add up some borders on that. I'm going to format those cells. Putting in, we're going to focus on that black border here. We'll use the double on the right, then we'll go with the single on the bottom and top, and the double on the, we'll go double on the left. I'll change that to black border. I think I like the black. And then we'll use the dotted line in the middle, which is consistent with our theme. Okay, let's update the rest of this so it's consistent with our theme. I'm going to go all the way down to, let's say, 102. And I want to make sure that we've got all the rows, and then I'll just update up to here. And then so I'm going to add in that black border, and then make sure that also the back is that color, and then that border here, I'm going to go with the double black on the left and right, and that should be sufficient. And then we'll go with the solid on the bottom. Okay, we'll take a look at that, see how that works. I like that better. And then we have to add the black in the middle. So going all the way up here, I'm going to add in the double black all the way up to here, up to the black font. So we're going to format those cells. Now we got a nice consistent theme all the way throughout our expandable column. So we're going to be able to expand these. So basically I want to hide F, G, and H, and I want to hide I. We need some icons to help us. We're going to add those in. So it's looking really good. So we're going to view by teacher. We need to put that in white. So we're going to instruct the user to change it. This I'm going to change a little bit, let's go ahead and go with a lighter white. You can almost not see that alternating color. We'll just go with the white on here. Click OK because I want it to be clear. All right, so now we've got that. That looks really nice. And we got set filters, so we'll add buttons here. I'm going to add some buttons up here, and we got our lesson details here. So again, we're going to go consistent with that black, and I'm going to go all the way. Actually, we're going to bring this all the way down to where the others are because we want those students just to be consistent, and then that's going to be hidden. So I'm going to bring it all the way down to 102, and then what we'll do is we'll format those cells again, bringing in that black border double on the right side. Okay, that looks good, and then we'll do all the way for the remaining as well on that black border. Considering we also want to add some buttons on that, some icons, a title on that, so let's get that done right now. So what kind of buttons are we going to have? Well, the first thing I want to be able to navigate between days. I want to be able to add in a specific button. So and I want to have a tab up here so we can switch between day view, month view, and week view. So we'll add the double rounded side. So I'm going to add this one here. It looks like a tab. Same side, rounded corner. So that's the one I want to add. We'll add it up here. It's not going to be too big because we don't have a lot of space, and we'll use a specific we'll use this theme, which is consistent with our thing. And what I want to do, basically, we're just going to call this day, right? And then we'll format this, and when we get it just the way we like it, then we'll be able to duplicate it accordingly to everybody, to all the other buttons here. So we're going to write it and then center that, and then we're going to make it that blue color, and then I'm probably going to bold it. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but it's a little bit, we don't have too much space on here. So I'm going to format that shape. I'm going to go into the text box, and on the right line, we're going to do something like 0.03 or 0.04. That'll be good. We don't need the left, the top, and the bottom. We don't need that, so we can close that out. Okay, so day. So I want to put an icon in there. I'm going to duplicate that using Control D, and we're going to create one for month. And that one will need to be a little bit bigger. And then I want week, also week, and then month. Now we're going to do month here. So, and then we'll duplicate that again. This one's going to be called month. So I want individual tabs that are going to help us out. All right, I like that. Let's make sure that we got the color of that font. I'm going to select all three, making sure I want this color. That's the color. Good. That's our accent color that we're using. The week and the month are going to have to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to format those. And the width, we're going to change that to about 0.75 on that. That'll give us space for the icon. I do have icons saved, so we can just click on these particular buttons, and automatically we're going to be displaying. Now, the day view is going to be here, all the way here. Then we're going to have the month view on the right, the week, and then the month. So it's going to be like that. We're going to use a lot of columns in this particular screen. Okay, so we're going to add in the icons shortly, but I want to do a few other buttons. I also want to duplicate this here, make it a little bit smaller. In this case, we're not going to use any font. I want to be able to open or close that filter. So let's make this 0.23, pretty much square on this one. And I want to open this filter, 0.23. So here, what I want to do is I want to place that right about here. So then what I want to do is, that's a little bit small, but I want to click here and I want to open this detail section. And I want another one that's going to click and open that filter. So I'm going to duplicate that using Control D. And then I think I'll make these a little bit bigger so we have some space for the icon. Let's go with 0.3 on this. Okay, so that's going to give us a little bit. All right, I like that. So again, we're going to be able to use these buttons here to select and open and close them. So we'll add the icons later, but we just need the icons here. That's sufficient enough. Okay, very good. I like that. Let's move all these buttons over to the main section, right? Because I want to leave this section for more of our class information. So it's going to go right here. I would like to put some class detail. I want to put the class name right up here. But since we have one big cell here, I really don't want to use that. So we can use a text box for that. So I'm going to enter a text box, and then we'll go ahead and add that linked to a specific cell. So we'll insert a text box here, and then I'm just going to draw it up right about here. So the same here. We'll put a white border around that, and then we'll put no fill. So no fill on that. We'll put a shape outline, a white shape outline, and then what I'll do is I'll link it to a specific cell. So let's say just say B9 or something like that, right about here. And then what I'll do is I'll just put, let's say, chemistry. I'll put that formula in here in a moment, but 101 just temporarily. So we say we have a there. And what I want to do is I want to link it. So I'm just going to do equals and then B9. So that will allow me to change the font. So now we change the font to this white color, and it's going to show up, and then we'll put that a little bit big. I'll center that. So that way when we select a class or select a lesson, that lesson or that class title is going to show up right here. So make it big, and we can see that clearly. Okay, so that way it's always displayed there. I like that there. We can drop that down. It gives it also consistent with our theme here. Okay, so what else do we want? So here we want some buttons. I want some navigation buttons, and I want the date. And I'm going to duplicate this here, and I also want a date. So I'm going to put that date up here. Obviously, it's not going to be linked to B9. In this case, we'll put a date. So what kind of date we're going to have? Let's put today's date here. We'll put it in, let's say, B6. So I'm going to put in today is the 2nd, so it's April 2nd, 5/2 or whatever date, and then May 2nd actually. Okay, so time flies. And then I'll put a long date. I want this to be a long date, Sunday, May 2nd, and then I want this linked to this, so that again we're going to use this, and instead of B9 it's going to be B6. So that way it's going to automatically, remember when you link it, it changes it back, so we just have to change that font color to that. And then I want to make this bold, and I'm going to make it a lot bigger so we can clearly see the day. That way as we navigate through the day view, we can see the date very, very clearly. Okay, so speaking of navigation, why don't we put some buttons to navigate those days? I want to have basically a previous day, a next day, and then I want to have a today button, and then I want to have a calendar pop up so we can choose a day. So I really want 3 different options on a small toolbar. So let's insert some shapes to help us with that. So again, I'm going to insert this arrow here, and I'll make it just how I like it. So I'll zoom in here, again, all the way, and then let's go ahead and give it the format the consistent format that we're using here. And also, we don't need any specific labels, but I'll make this a little bit bigger here like this. And then, so that's going to be for the next day, and then I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to rotate that. I'm just going to flip it horizontally. So that's going to be for our, so here's our basic navigation. Then I want a button, just a square button that's going to be for today, and I want another square button that's going to allow us to click on a calendar. So if we insert basically a shape, a square shape, and I want a big square shape basically the same size as this one, the same height as this button here, and then also the format those. So let's go ahead and format it just like that. So that's what I want. This one's going to say today, and then I'm going to duplicate that and create a very small button, at least a small width, so something like 0.23 on this one. That's going to be for our calendar. So we're going to line everything up. So we're going to put the calendar icon. This one's going to say today. So I'll put it in all in capitals, today. And then we'll format that according to the same consistency. So putting it in the center, and then also we're going to remove, we don't need the spacing on that, so we go to size and properties, and the text box here, we want to make sure that we're going to remove all of that, and then set it to blue, set it to that blue, and also the bold. So we can set here blue and make it bold. So that's good. That's what I like today. And then what we want is I want an icon here, and then previous and next. So we'll line everything up, just holding down the control, and then what we'll do is we'll line it up, and then what I want to do is I want to distribute them horizontally so that the spacing is equal. Okay, I like that, and then we just need to add the icons, which we're going to get to, of course. And so let's take a look at what else we got. We got mostly everything on the buttons. I'm going to add some buttons here and here, so we need some buttons. So let's add, so we want to be able to close this lesson. I want to be able to use this to toggle it, or we can use it, so we'll have 2 options to toggle. So why don't we just add this? I like this, so we'll just change this, and then what we can do is we can just call it, let's try this, I'll call it close details. And then again, also in the center, and then removing the spacing on that. Let's see if that works out. That's going to be helpful size and properties. And then going down, and then on that text box, we're going to get rid of the spacing. We don't need that. We'll just center it accordingly and click OK. All right, a blue font there. I like that. Let's click on it again, and then click this blue font. Okay, that looks good. and we don't need, I'll make it a little bit bigger. That's sufficient enough. So I'm going to duplicate that, and then here using Control D, duplicate it. Then what we want to do is I want to set close the filter. So let's just change this to close filters. Okay, I like that. That looks okay. That's sufficient for us. So this is going to close this section. It's going to close this section. We give it a name here, so we know what name we're going to be using. I'll use close detail button here. Call this close detail button, and I'm going to close this called close filter button. So it's kind of common sense there. And then close, so that way we can remember it. Close filter. I'll just call it filter button. Okay, so we've got those named, and I'll line those up accordingly, holding down the control, lining them up, and then putting them high so we don't see them. Okay, that's going to give us, so when I click this, it's going to close this section. When I click this, it's going to close this section. This section will probably always remain open because anytime we select a class, we're going to need to see it on there. And so also let's add in some icons now. So I'm going to insert a picture. I've got some icons saved up here. I'm going to need probably all of these icons here. So I'm going to add in all of those, and I'm just going to insert those, and we'll size them accordingly. Obviously, they're too big. So let's go down to 0.22, something like that, and then set it up. Okay, so what do we have here? So let's bring them over here. So I've got the filter. I'm going to place that right there. That's a little bit, I think they're all a little bit too big. So let's go, and all we need to do is our select objects, highlight all of them here, and then we'll just go into 0.18, making them smaller. Okay, so now we've got them smaller, we've got them sized the way we want them. The calendar, I'm going to pull that right here, right, because we need that calendar. I want to select that. Also, the settings, I want to put that right here. And I may size them slightly differently, and I'll put this here. I want the day view to go here. I want the month view to go here, and I want the week view to go here. So we zoom in, we'll see that. That looks nice. We'll space it accordingly. The week's a little bit big, so we can bring that down here. And also the month looks like it's sized right. I'm going to space everything accordingly. Holding down the control, I want the buttons, the icons, and everything centered properly. So all of these, everything I want centered here, so that way everything gets lined up, and I'm going to center those horizontally. Okay, I like that there. That looks good. So now all we need to do is just group them individually, or we can group them. So I'm just going to take these, and I'll bring this one down a little bit closer. I'll keep this nice and tight and looking good like that, and we'll group everything. I'm going to group this here together, then we'll assign individual macros to that once we build out. Okay, so we've got this, and that looks good. I'm going to do the same thing for this. This one's a little bit too big, so we can format that. Let's put this at 0.16, and then we can, so I'm going to have a pop-up calendar here. When we click this, a pop-up calendar, so that way we can navigate to any specific day. So zooming in helps us, again, lining things up horizontally and grouping them. Okay, and also when we group them, we want to certainly make sure, let's go ahead and group these, and then we're going to set them to size but don't. So I'm going to set these all here, I'm going to group them together, and then we're going to size but don't move. Okay, so let's add these. There we go. Okay, now we've selected all the groups. Move but don't size. Size and properties, going into properties, move but don't size with cells. Okay, that's for sure. This edit, I think we'll use this a little bit later on that one. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that right away, so I'll delete that. Don't think I need that one. Okay, so that's looking good. Now we've got we don't need a border around here, so we can get rid of that. No outline here. And so as we navigate, I may change these buttons around a little bit, but we'll see. So here, what I want to do is I want to have the time, and then basically, so here I want to put in the time, the first time, and I want to do the same thing here. Skip a row and then put in the time. So basically I want to do that. And how many do I want to create? Well, let's take a look inside the admin. What's going to be here? We're either going to put, this is part of the view by. So if this is teacher, I'm going to put the teacher here. If this says room, I'm going to put the room here. So, and we have a limit though. If we go into the admin, we know that rooms and types have limits. So if we go in the admin and we take a look at sometimes the classes and the sessions, we see rooms. We look like we've got a 19 limit on that or 20 limit on that. So we see that, and the same thing for class types. So we could probably put in, let's just say 20. I think 20 is good. So a limit of 20 teachers, 20 rooms, 20 class types. That should be sufficient. And so let's add that into the schedules. So if we're going to add 20 rooms, 20 teachers, or 20 types, then we need to know what column we're starting at. So we're going to equals column. We're starting at column 15. So if we're going to start at column 15, we know we need to go all the way to column 45, right? 45 is going to get us that, or 55, sorry, 55, not 123. So if we know we're starting at column 15, we need to go all the way to column, let's say 55. So that's going to get us 40 columns. So 55 columns are going to get us exactly where we need to go. That's going to be 40 columns, which is going to be 20 because we have one each. So why don't we just go up to here and then here? Okay, so that's going to be perfect. Okay, so we get up to 54. That's sufficient. That'll give us room. So now we can delete. So basically, what I want to have is I want to have a specific time here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have, so we can set the column widths. Whatever we set the column widths will be. So we'll take care of that later. So inside this time here, and we'll highlight this. I'm going to set that specifically all the way to, so I'm going to set that specifically. That's going to be our cell style. We'll go with our table header here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put in the times down here. So what is that start time? So we're going to go in here in the admin here and take a look at what are we going to start that time at. If we go into the application settings here, or actually general, if we go here inside the classes, we have a start time here. We have an end time here. So we should put those inside variables. So we can create an start time. I want to know the start time. And I want to know the class end time. So end time. I also want to know the interval and put that. That's going to help us both in VBA and in formulas. So this is the interval, but this is actually the text-based interval. I want to know the actual interval based on what has been chosen here, right? So how do I know that? Well, we can put that inside here. I want to know the selected interval. I want to know the decimal value of whatever interval has been selected. So we can simply just use a formula for that, and we can index that to see how that works, and we put that in here. So let's do that right now. So we're going to say equals index, and what are we indexing? We're going to index this array here, and I want to know this here specific range of cells, not array. And then what I want to do is I want to match. I want to look for the row number. What am I matching? I'm going to look up this value, and I'm going to look it up here inside this specific time, right? So we have that under the intervals, and then 0, we want an exact match, and I want to look up the exact column. Okay, so that's going to be it. So that's all we need. So as we change this interval, 15 or 10 minutes or whatever, it's going to change right here. I'm going to call that interval, and that's going to help us inside both VBA. So I'm going to highlight that. Let's call it the selected interval. Okay, so we've got that there, and I'll give it that color. So now we've got that named range. So that's going to help us when we put it inside the schedule. All we need to do is going to be dynamic based on the start time, based on the selected interval. So here inside our schedule, we can just put something like equals start time, and that's going to put the start time in there. Of course, we're going to format it as a time, and then we're going to bring it down. So when it gets, so what kind of time? I make sure I don't want to take up a lot of space. So I'm going to put in something like time, but maybe not this one. So let's try a custom one. I have one saved here. Something like, I don't want seconds here, so maybe something small or something, but what we can do is we can select like something like this, right? And we'll try that. We'll see how that works. But if we can also make it a little bit smaller by going into custom and then removing some spaces or something. So if we want to remove a space, we can do that. So click OK. So that's 7 a.m. So it's going to start our time. But what about the interval? Well, I simply just want to add the interval to that, but it's a little bit more complex. But I want to add the same formula all the way down. So I want to check to see if it's greater than the end time or not. So this next time, we're going to do something like here, equals if error. If there's an error, of course, we're going to show blank. Then what I want to do is I want to check if this time here plus the interval, plus the interval which we just, interval, this is the one we just added here, if that is greater than the end time, right? We set the end time, then show nothing. Then show nothing. Otherwise, simply show whatever's here plus the interval. So plus the interval. Now we can drag this column down all the way. That way we're going to have it automatically update. Okay, so let's take a look at that, and we'll add we need the if error. If error in this case, it's also going to add in double quotes. Okay, so there you go. Now when we format this, and we can copy down the format. I'm going to copy this and then paste that format right in here, paste special, and paste that format right here. Okay, so now we've got the 710. So now all I need to do is drag that down. Let's say we'll go down to the bottom here. all the way down here, and it's going to show blank up until our end time, which is what I want, exactly what I want. Okay, so now all we need to do in the admin, if we decide we're going to change it, okay, we want it 8 o'clock a.m. and we want to change it to 15-minute intervals, it's going to automatically change on the schedule. Now it starts at 8 and 8:15, so it's automatically adjusted accordingly. Okay, so now all we need to do is just increase this column maybe to about 20, right? So we give enough space for that lesson. This will be dynamic, so basically it's going to say room 1 or teacher 1 or something like that. So let's add some conditional formatting, and then we can just simply drag it and duplicate it. So I'm going to add in some conditional formatting all the way to the end here. We're going all the way to, let's take a look, BA102 right about here. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to simply add some formatting. So I'm just going to add a color that we have, our foundational color, and then we're going to add some conditional formatting. We'll get rid of that. And now let's add some conditional formatting to that. So we will go up, and then we'll add it in. We'll do odd or even rows, so it's easy to look at. So do a new row, and then I want to base it on what the value is inside O, because if that changes, then our conditional formatting can change. So it's going to be on two conditions: equals and then the first condition is going to be if O, in this case 4, does not equal empty. So, but of course, we're going to remove the $ from the 4 because we want to make sure that it's going to be for every row. Then we're going to do a comma, and then we're going to do mod row. Mod row, and then mod row is going to be for even rows. We want to color them a little bit differently. We're going to give them the same border, but we want to do a little bit alternating color. So formatting those, and I'll probably add in some additional formatting here. So we'll just go with the top and bottom border for now, and then we'll add in a little bit different border for the middle time. So we'll do top and bottom. We'll do a fill of, I'll do this light gray fill, and then we'll do a lighter color for like a white for the opposite. Okay, clicking OK, and then I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and click OK here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to format those cells. Again, conditional formatting, manage rules here, and then we'll do new rule here, and then this one I'm going to make it white, but this is going to be for the odd row. So we got to change that to 1, format those cells, and then we'll do the white color here and click OK. And it'll probably go with a little bit lighter, so click OK and then apply that. Take a look at that. That looks okay. Let's go with a little bit lighter color on this. I don't want it so dark because I want to be able to see it. And then let's go the fill on this one, and then more colors on this one. We'll just do a little bit lighter. Okay, that's going to be good. That'll be a nice not to. And then what we'll do is we'll just add the verticals. Okay, so I like that. So it's stopping here at 5. We need to add one more on that one, or theoretically, if your lesson goes until 5, it should stop here. So we may end up doing so instead of equals or greater than or equals, we can do this. So if we do greater than or equals and we copy that format down, it's going to go into 5. Why is that? Because if your last class ends at 5 o'clock, right? Your last class 4:45. This would be any class that's starting at 5. Any lesson that starts at 5 would go here. So if your end time is 5 o'clock, 4:45 p.m. should be your last. So if we were to format those cells, copy those, if we use less than or greater than or equal to the end time, like this one, it would automatically. So now when we copy down the formula here, and we bring down that formula all the way to our last one here, and then paste in those formulas. All right, let's clean this up. We didn't do move but don't size on this one. We need to clean this up. Let's try here, 0.55 here, and then also we got to get this icon back to where it belongs here. This one here, this is the month view, so we're going to grab this week, put that right back in here where it belongs, and then we'll make sure to group everything accordingly like we did. And then also, best way to avoid this, let's see what didn't get grouped. Okay, we'll ungroup that. We want to make sure, use our selection to make sure we group everything inside that. Then we're going to group it, and then we want to make sure that we adjust those sizes. Every time we regroup it, we need to set move but don't size. All right, let's add our vertical lines here, and then what we can do is we can then bring it out here. So again, let's start it here. I'm going to add just a border on that all the way. We'll go all the way down here, and this is fine. And then format those cells. Sorry, it's off the screen. We're going to put a solid border on in the right side, and I'm going to put a dotted line in the middle here. That's sufficient enough for us. And now what we can do is we can basically, the VBA is going to change this, so we don't need to worry about that. So okay, now I just want to copy those column widths. So I'm just going to copy our first column, and then we're going to make some changes accordingly. So I'm going to just use copy, and then I'm going to bring it all the way out, extrapolate it all the way to our last column here, which is right here. Then I'm going to paste the special, and then paste in those column widths right here. Okay, so we've got that. Now they're all spaced accordingly. Now I just want to bring in those formats. So I'm going to copy this one here. We'll double check our conditional formatting, and then we're just going to copy everything very, very easily Control C, we're going to bring it on our first row and all the way to our last row and our last column here, all the way down here. And then we'll just go ahead and paste that in exactly, pasting everything here. It's going to bring it all in. So now we have it. Double check when you highlight your conditional formatting. Sometimes it gets, there's a lot of rules, but it looks good now because we have just simple rules. But we did take double up on our conditional formatting. Notice we have Q3 to P102. We have a few different things. So we can easily make it one single. All we need to do is just make sure that we started out in O. Starting at O, we can change this to O. So that way we don't double up on our conditional formatting. And change this to O, and change this to O, and then we can remove the other rule. So just deleting this one and then this one. Okay, so now everything starts, and click apply. Make sure that everything looks the way it should. Perfect. Remember, VBA is going to take care of putting this in. All right, we've got a nice little schedule here. We'll add conditional formatting in here maybe, but I like the way that this is done because generally times go until 5 o'clock and then this last lesson. So I like the way that that looks. Okay, let's continue on. So what else do we have to do? We've got to do, I want to add in some additional features. I want to make sure that these columns can be hidden. So let's add in some VBA to hide these columns. And then we can start adding additional features. But first, let's update the formatting here. I want to add some dynamic conditional formatting for the students. So we'll just highlight all these rows. We'll go all the way down to the last row. And then we'll base some conditional formatting on whether there's a student here. So we'll go in new rule here. And then I'm also going to add in some conditional formatting. So we use a formula, and then it's going to be based on two conditions, right? So again, just as it equals and then the conditions are, is there something here? The text here does not equal empty, removing the $sign from the A because we don't want to do that, and also based on the mod rows, odd and even rows, so we can alternate that just so that we'll remove the equals from there. That's automated. So for the even rows, I'll give it just a white, so we'll format that, and then we'll do just maybe the side border here, and we'll do internal borders here. So let's do just the fill color here of a white, this one white, and that's going to be sufficient for now. And then what I want to do is I want to copy this rule and add something for the white. Click OK. And so for those two, and then I want to do a new rule. This one's going to be for the odd rows. Use a formula, paste that in there, change it for odd rows, and then change that formula, and then you will just use one of our comma colors. I'm going to go into fill effects. That's going to help us use what was there before this gray here. That's what I want to use. So I'm going to use fill effects, but it's going to be the same color both ways, and click OK, and then apply. Okay, I like that. Now I'm going to add one more. I want one more conditional format. I want to put a dotted line on all of these, but only when there's a text. So again, I'm going to highlight with this type just the internal columns here, not the external columns. And I want to add a dotted line for only values. So again, new rule here. And then we'll do is use a formula, and this particular is only going to be based on whether there's a value in LA. It does not equal empty. Again, removing the $sign, not the and signal in this one. And then we don't need that. So the format here is just going to be this dotted line. I'm going to use a border dotted line on the left and right. That's it. So click OK and then OK. All right, that's what I want. So as we add students, then we can say that'll be fine. So when we click on a specific lesson, those students will load up here. All right, so we've got that. That looks really good. I'm going to right justify this and this to make sure that everything's set. We're going to be adding the exams here. We're going to be adding, we need to increase this just a little bit so we can set attendance for selected students. All right, what else do we want to do? Let's get that VBA in so we can actually make these. I'm going to use a specific macro, a single macro, to basically alternate whether we're opening and closing it. So it's going to be either a show or hide detail. So let's go into the VBA and write a little bit of code. Now they're ready. I'm going to save the work, going into the developer, Visual Basic, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new module here, insert a module here, and we're going to call this schedule. To give it a name, we'll click on the properties here, and we're just going to call it schedule, and then maybe something like miscellaneous or something like that. Either way, schedule macros, because we want to put day view, but this particular macros are going to be for regardless of the view. We're going to might as well add another one, insert module, and this one's going to be called schedule, and then we'll put day view. So I want specific macros for the day view. Okay, good. So we can remove those properties. We don't need that now. Let's go back into the first one we created, and we're going to create two macros here. So again, let's call this sub schedule, and then let's call show or hide details. So this one's going to do both, show or hide the details. It's just basically going to toggle those details, show or hide details. And then I want to write another one. We're going to call this sub schedule show or hide filters, show or hide filters. Very, very simple. Okay, these are relatively simple macros. All we need to do is determine what is the current state, and then we're going to either show it or hide it based on the current state. So we'll take a look. So how do we know what the current state is? Well, we can use this button, or we can use a few different things. If this button, this close details button, is visible, we know it's open. Then we should close it. It's the same thing. If this close filter button is, if this is visible, then we know to close it. If it's not visible, then we need to know to open it. So we can use the visibility of that to simply determine whether we're going to be closing or opening that. So back into the VBA editor, we're going to focus on the schedule. So with schedule, that's the screen, right? That's the specific name, right? We've done here. So that's our, let's double check that we have the right name. If you're not sure, just use a dot in front of it. Then you know the IntelliSense comes up. We know we've got it right. If dot shapes, in this case, we're focused on the closed detail right here. So this is the button. I'm going to copy this just to make sure we get the name right. I'm going to go back into the VBA, paste it in there. Dot visible equals true, right? We're just using true in this case. Then close the panel, right? Because it's panel. Else, okay, then, not the, then close the panel. Else, then we need to open the panel. So else, and then end if. So in this case, in if else, that means it's not open. We need to open the panel. Open panel. So to close the panel, it's relatively simple. All we're going to be doing is hiding this button here. So this button here, we're just going to hide it. So the first thing we want to do, because it's currently visible, so the first thing we want to do is just hide it. Equals dot visible, MSO false. So we're going to hide that button. Then also we want to hide the columns. So dot range. What are those columns? It's going to be columns F through H. So F colon H. In this case, not going to be dot value, but we want to use entire column. Hidden, dot hidden, the hidden property we're going to use equals true. And then all we need to do is just copy this and reverse it when we're showing it. And that's going to be it. Relatively simple. And then we can maybe select another cell. So in this case, it's going to be C true. In this case, it's going to be false. We're actually hiding it. Okay. Then I want to select something else. Let's just say, well, let's say L3. Let's go ahead and select that. And then just to get us, so that it's the same with dot range. Selecting a cell is fine unless you're not on the screen. If your macro is running and you hit select but you're not on the screen, it will create a bug. But we're on the screen in this case, so we're good to go. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now all I need to do is pretty much copy this and then just change the columns and change. So in this case, it's going to be I through J. I through J, if we're hiding for the filters. Right. And then again, I through J here. And then all we need to do, again, is just simply change the shape name. We're looking for, in this case, we're looking for closed filters. So this one's called closed filter button. So we can copy that and then bring that inside here. So this type, we're checking for closed filter button. This is the one we're going to hide, close the filter button, and then again, close the filter button. Now we can assign this macro, these macros, to this specific button. So close details. So if I copy this, we can then simply assign it. So I'm going to right click here, assign the macro, paste that in there, and click OK. I'm going to do the same thing for this button here. So I'm going to zoom in because this is our details. I'm going to select on the icon and I'm going to select on the button back. In fact, I'm going to move it a little bit to make sure I have both. Selecting both of those, again, right clicking on this one here. And then what we're going to do, right clicking on those, assigning the macro here, pasting that in, click OK. Now we make sure, now we can just move this back to here. Now we can just move this back here, unselect this one, I'll move this back right in the middle here. And then also for this one, I want to do the filter. So I'm going to try to select both of those, right clicking. Again, this one assigning the macro, both on the schedule here, show or hide filters, that's the one I want here. And we're going to do the same thing here. Again, right click here, assigning the macro, and then show or hide schedule, show or hide filters. Okay, so we've assigned the macros. We can zoom back out to 100%. And now what we can do is just click this button here. Click it, that closes the filters, click good. Now we have show the details and show the filters. All right, that's working really good. Now we can continue on. Let's build out the admin section in the hidden columns a little bit. So we're going to move over here and we need to know some information here. So the first thing I want to know is, I want to know if the schedule is loading or not. Schedule load or class load or something like that. We're going to need to know both. So let's take a look at that. Now keep in mind when the class loads, it's going to fill in all this information, right? So it's going to be a change event on that class load. We could probably do class or lesson load. However, when a user makes a change, that's another one. So we're going to need to differentiate that. So we may want to have both schedule load and class load. We'll keep it that way for now. Also, what else I want to know? I want to know what view is it? Is it day view, week view, or month view? So that, because we're going to have to make different decisions based on the view. So important also. And of course, more importantly, the from date and the to date. From date and the to date. Now, this is for, if it's a single day, of course, it's going to be the same. So why don't we just put in a single day, the same one we've done. So we're going to go ahead and put in, let's just say 5.2 here, and then 5.2 here. So for the day view, it's going to be the same. We'll change that to long view. So these are all of our dates. So let's just put in long date. Now the long date is going to be used for our day view. So let's take a look in here, and all of this, I'm going to give it a specific color, and then so we can differentiate between some of our date values and some other things. So we'll bring this down here a little bit and then go to here. Okay, so also this one here, and I'm going to left justify that. So we've got that. These are basically our date information, but what else do I need? I also want to know the selected class ID. Selected, maybe we'll call it, it's called class ID. I want to know, remember the class ID, just to review, we have a class. Classes create lessons, so each class has a class ID. We also have a lesson database, and each lesson has their own ID as well. So we want to make sure we differentiate between those two. Okay, so moving down, let's go back in the schedule. We need to know our selected class ID as well as our selected lesson ID. Select class ID, and also I want to know the selected class database row. Selected class database row, very important, and the selected class name. Selected class name. For the lesson itself, I need to know the selected lesson ID and the selected lesson database row. All that's very important. All right, so for the classes, the class information, we'll give it a specific color, maybe orange, that we can differentiate between the class and the lesson here. And then we'll do this in maybe just a red color so we can differentiate. So that's a good start for the basic information here. And we're going to need both that. So we'll expand this a little bit, bring this in here. So we have here selected class ID. Now this selected lesson ID, whatever we put in here is going to help us when we select a specific lesson, we're going to have that. So for example, let's say we, in our lesson database, we have here our lesson ID of 4, our class ID is 1. So we want to fill that in. So if our lesson ID is 4, we can fill in the rest of it. So let's just take a look inside the schedule here, and we can put in 4. Now we want to know the rest of it, right? So we want to start building out the rest of it so we can help. So what would the lesson database row is? It would be relatively simple. All we would need is use the named range using a match and then the lesson ID. So equals if error, and then what we'll use match. And then we're looking up our lesson ID here. We're going to, again, use the lesson ID, the named range that we created. And also, we want to make sure it's 0. We're looking for an exact match. And also, I want to add 3 on it. I want the row. In this case, I want the row, comma, and then if there's an error, and then we'll just do double quotes. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So again, lesson ID 4 is located on database row 7. That is what I want here. 4 is 7. Okay, perfect. Because what I want now, what I can do is I can extract the class ID from it. But I want to actually add more onto this. Let's take a look at this lesson database. So what I really want is I want to add more onto this. But I want to extract some of the class information. I want to extract the class name, and I want to put it in here. So I want to extract, but I want it through a formula. So that means if the class name in the class, let's bring over our class database here. If the class name, class database here, if the class name here, English, if it changes, I want it to change also inside the lesson database. So if I use a formula up here and I bring down that formula, whenever I need the information, it will automatically update. So I want to do that with I want to do that with a lot of things, bringing in the class information. Why is that important? Because when I run an advanced filter, all this lesson database, I'm going to bring it through an advanced filter. I'm going to create those lessons based on all of this information through an advanced filter. Let's say I only want lessons for the current day. So we'd look up only lessons for the current day. There are none, so we'll make that update. But so that's what we want to do. So let's create a class and create some lessons for the current date or maybe some date after, and we can see that. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's create some additional classes. So inside the class, we'll do a new class, is what we did last time, and then we could add a subject here. Let's say math. Okay, we'll do a math class. That's good. Math class, and we'll just give it a teacher here. We only have a few teachers here. And then also give it a term. That was going to update the dates. I think term 3. So I don't want term. Let's do term 2 because I want to make sure to include the current date. That's fine right here. It's going to include dates, but I'll update this to the current date because it's not going to create any classes before the current date. So 5/2, and of course today's Sunday, so that means we're going to schedule a class. I'm going to go back to the admin. I'm going to add Sundays and Saturdays as days, and then back into the classes, and we're going to add. I want to make sure that we have that here. So inside the classes there, we want to schedule Monday, Tuesday, and then I'll just Saturday and Sunday and Monday. Okay, so now we have that. We can select a room or location, room 2, and then we do need a start time. We'll do it a relatively early start time. This will create some classes, so we'll set it at 9:15 a.m. and then a duration of perhaps 2 hours. Okay, so we have that, and we'll do some notes. I think it's important to put in all this. I want a class type here. We'll do morning class type and test class notes. We also have to do some more work on this. You know, we have to add some limits. We have to have for conflicts, and I've got a list of things. What are we going to need to add on that? Just keep in mind. So I know I've got it written down. Let's take a look at what I have got written down here for this. So we've got, for the classes, I want load on enter ID change. We have to check the max students, or we can't have more students than the max. Max students for enrolling new students. And we're going to check for conflicts, right? Scheduling conflicts. Check for teacher scheduling conflict. Check for holiday conflicts. And we have to set defaults on admin. In other words, admin has some defaults for new classes, so I've got that on a to-do list. I don't know if we're going to get to that today, but that's on my to-do list. Okay, so we've got 9:15 a start date here, and a start time, a start duration here. Certificate, we can just add a certificate, and then also a grade here. Okay, so that's it. That's pretty much it. We don't have to. We can enroll a few students. That might be kind of helpful. Okay, we need to save it. You got it, Randy. Okay, we've saved the class. It's created those lessons now. We can add a few students here. All right, just as we did last week. So now we've got this, and now let's, again, update that. Take a look at our lesson database. As you see, we have more lessons here, and that's exactly what I want, 5/2. So this lesson will show up. Now I want to make sure, we'll probably add another one, but this lesson will show up on our schedule. Okay, continuing on, so back into our admin. So what I want to do is I want to show that class information here. I want to add more onto that. So what do I exactly want? Well, I want to show the class subject. What subject? The subject is based on whatever the class. I want to show the class type. I want to show the student. Now, again, if there's a student filter, I want to show that as a student. What do I mean by that? Is the student, notice we have a student ID here, right? Student. In our enrolled student, we've got a class. So basically what I want to do is I want to look through this database and see if a specific student is enrolled in that class or not. And then I want to put true or false. That's only going to be important if we filtered out by student. It's only going to be important if we've selected a student. Notice we have if we have a specific student here, and we're going to have to build out those named ranges. I've got a lot of named ranges to build out too as well. Okay, so we're going to do that right after we finish this, right after we add more items to this. So student, and then what I want to know if there's an icon, right? I want to bring that icon from the class, and I want to bring that class color. So all of that we need to bring in. So basically we're just going to look up this class ID here and bring in all the information except for student, right? We're going to bring in all the student we're going to be looking up in the enrolled student database. We're looking that up here to see if they're enrolled in that class or not. That would be if there's a specific student selected. Okay, so we have all those headers, but what I want to do now is in order to get these formulas and bring down that, we need to add a lot of named ranges to our classes database here. What do we have so far? So let's look inside our formulas and named range and see what we don't have too many, but we need to add more. I have now a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll create just add one single name range for the entire database, and then they'll set the column. That's certainly possible, but what I like to do is when I look at a formula, I like to know exactly what column. If it's column 5 or column 7, I don't know by looking at it. I don't memorize this, and I'm guaranteeing you haven't either. So it's better to just see exactly. So we have class ID, class name, class type, but I need to add a lot more to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this here, and I want class teacher. I pretty much want everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a few with you, and then I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to create the rest because it's going to take a while and there's no reason for you to. So we're going to do class teacher. And this is really going to help us for the formula. So I'm going to paste that in there, and all I'm going to do in this case is set the column. So in this case, the column is C. Tab out, tab in, make sure the teacher click OK. All right, I'm going to do the rest of them, and I'll show you just in a moment. Okay, welcome back. All right, so basically I've created a lot of them. Class ID, class name, class notes, all right, classroom, teacher, term, type, year, class data is something different. And so I've got all of these, so they're all based on the dynamic. So it's really, really simple. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because we're going to need to bring all of that data inside the schedule. What else are we going to need? I'm going to need something else. I'm also going to need the class name. So that's very important. I want them class names sorted. We got that already here. Okay, good. We're good to go on that. Let's go back inside and start adding those formulas that I was speaking of to bring this information down. So how are we going to do that? So the idea is when I'm ready to run the schedule, either one of them, the day, week, or week, I want to bring all that information, all that class information down here because it could change. So I don't want to keep it in this database, but just with a formula, and we can bring it down each time. So the idea is that we're going to based on the class ID. Now the class ID is going to be located right here in C1. So we're going to say equals if error, right? If there's an error, we don't want to show anything. We're going to be indexing. And what are we indexing? In this case, I want the class subject. That's the name range. I just complete. You can see them all here. Class subject. I like those because I know exactly what I'm looking for. The row number, well, the row number, of course, is going to be a match based on whatever's in C1. Obviously, there's nothing in C1, but as we bring this formula down, it'll show the class ID. So we're looking up the class ID, which is right here. We want an exact match, 0. And then, of course, we are going to need to also use a single column here, so the column is going to be 1. If there's an error, will show up. Okay, so that's perfect. That's what I want, blank. But if I copy this down and paste those formulas here, it's going to show that subject. That's what I want. I'm going to highlight these in yellow so I know signifies that they're formulas here, so it's very clear. And then what I want to do is I want to do the same thing for type. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to, instead of class subject, I'm just going to use class type. So just type it in here, class type here, bringing that in, and we'll check the class. Now the student's going to be a little bit different. In this case, what I want to do is I want to basically show true or false. And it's going to be based on whether that's a student, which student, the student that is located right in here. If it says all students, it's going to be, of course, true, right? Everything's going to be true because we want to include everything. But if it is not, if it's a specific student, it should show true or false, but only if it'll show true if the student is enrolled in this specific, let's put it here, lesson, enrolled student. If they're enrolled in this class, for example, this Fred Fetters is enrolled in class ID 1, David is enrolled in class 2, and so on and so forth. So we want to look, so if I put the David here inside the schedule right here, we're going to choose a drop-down list, if I put him in there, then I want him to show up only for those classes in which he is enrolled in. So only true inside this lesson database. I want to show true for all of the lessons in which he is enrolled in, right? All of those classes which he's enrolled in here. Okay, so that makes sense. So how do we do that? Well, we do that with, of course, a formula. And so we're going to do if equals, if I want to know first if the schedule, if it equals all students, then it's going to be true automatically. So that's the first thing. So if, and then we'll go to the schedule. If this equals all students, then it's going to be default to true no matter. Everyone's going to be true. Equals, and then we'll put in parentheses all students and the bracket, then it's going to be true. Okay, then our results are true. But otherwise, if, what I want to do is simply use a count if. Count if, and we're going to be, I think I have to add more named ranges here, so we're going to do that. Enrolled class ID, so we have that enrolled class ID, actually I got to add that in. Enrolled, and then the class ID. So I have an enrolled ID, but I want to add enrolled class ID. Let's copy that. I'm just going to copy that here, and then I'm going to escape out of there. I need to add more. So basically, I need to add a named range here. Notice we have an enrolled class ID here. I want to add a named range for that. So again, formulas, and let's paste that. Let's just paste that in here, right here with a comment here, right? Yeah, right here. I'm just going to put comment there and then paste that in so we can use that a little bit later on. And now, so what I want to do is I want to create the enrolled name manager, go back to enrolled. I want a named range for that. Enrolled ID, we have that here, which I want, so, but I don't want that exactly. I want the enrolled class ID, lesson ID. So let's look in that lesson ID and then enrolled. All right, right here inside this database, I want the class ID. I want a named range for this class ID. I've got one here, but I need one for the class ID. So name manager, let's do that, right? Enrolled ID, gonna copy this one, new, call this enrolled, and then in this case, class ID, I want that. And then I'm gonna paste that in here, and it's gonna be based on column B. So all I need to do is use column B. That's gonna help us in this formula B. So tab out and make sure that includes all the data, which it does, perfect. I also need one for the enrolled student ID. So again, we have the student ID, that's where we're gonna be enroll, and then student ID, because the student ID is also located in here, but of course that's located in column D. So we're going to tab out and paste that in here inside column D. That's what we're going to focus on, D. Clicking OK, tabbing into that, we make sure the student, okay, now it's basing on the student ID. That's much more important than student name. Student names can change. So close that out. So we're going to need those two things inside our formula. So let's take a look. Let's go back into that formula and continue on with it. So we have it here. We can get rid of this part now. We've saved it up. So in enrolled class ID, that's what I want to look up. I'm going to look up a specific class. What class am I looking up? I'm looking up whatever's in C1, right? That's one's going to go. Okay, that's one condition which we're reading. But what about another condition? It should be count ifs, right? There's more than one condition, count ifs. What's the other condition? Well, I want to look for a student. So I'm going to look up enrolled student ID. So if that enrolled student ID is present, then we know inside the class. But how do we know if it's there? Well, first of all, I have to look up the student ID. Where am I going to get that student ID from? I'm going to match whatever the student, I'm going to use match, and I'm going to determine that based on that index match. So we're going to index the student ID here, and we're going to look for a match. We're going to match it based on the student name. So we're looking it up here. Remember, it's on the schedule. It's going to be put in right here. So I'm looking that up, and I want to look it up based on all the student names. So we're going to put in student name here. Then I want an exact match. So we're looking up that ID. There, now that we have that ID, what I want to do is we'll put in column 1, right? That's for the index. So now we have 1, and then I want to know, is it greater than 0? So we'll close out. We're done with our count ifs, and I want to know if it's more than 0, greater than 0. Is a student found in that class? Basically is all we're looking for. If it is greater than 0, then we're going to put true. Otherwise, we're going to put false. Double parentheses, close it out. Okay, so that is it. That's our formula here. Now we just have a few more. I want to know what the icon is. And we take a look at here, we can just copy this. And I've created a named range for icon as well from our classes. So instead of class type, we're going to be calling this class icon. So icon there. And then the same thing for the next field we also want to do, but this one's called the class color. I want to bring that in. It's much easier if I bring it in, and then we have it in the original data. So class color. Okay, so of course it's not showing data, but as soon as we copy that information here and we paste in those formulas, we will see. We'll also do it with VBA. We'll see it here. There's no classes here, so it's false. That's fine. We want to make sure everything is here. When we expand this, will show us the full color. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. If there's no color, it's 0, so we should probably add a color to those, but it'll default to whatever current color, which is fine. Okay, that's exactly what I want. Bringing down that information. Now what I'm going to do is I want to create an advanced filter for our scheduling data. So we can filter out, in this case, it's going to be day view. So in this case, I want to filter out everything but except for the current day. So we got to pick a specific range that we're going to set that criteria in. So why don't we do this? Let's hide this for right now. I'm going to hide this, and we'll pick a new area, and we'll go all the way to, let's say, BA here. Make it, and I'll hide these columns here. We're not going to use those. Okay, so what I want now is a new criteria. So we're going to base it on all of this. So let's add some borders to that, and then we're going to base it on that. So remember, our data only comes to K, but we're going to extend it inside our macro. So I'm going to copy that, all of it, and I'm going to place it inside BA. And then we're going to add some criteria to that. So I'm going to put that right here inside BA2. I'm going to paste that in here. So now we have that. We're going to call this criteria, schedule criteria. So it's going to base schedule criteria. We're going to be basing it on different things, right? So criteria, but we need a little bit more. Actually, I need to insert one column because lesson date we're going to need 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that, and I'm going to copy that. So lesson date's going to actually have 2, right? We need to know, is it greater than or current equal, like for example, or less than or current equal. If it's week view or month view, we're going to have 2 different ranges. So what are those ranges? Well, it's basically going to be equals and then quotation greater than or equal to. And what is it? That specific schedule from date. So it's going to be based right here inside the schedule. We go back into the schedule, and it's this one right here, from date there. So that's it. And we want it in non-formatted. That's exactly what I want. And I'm going to copy this and bring it over here. The cell next, down B5, is what we're going to be having the from date, and we're going to use less than or equal to. Okay, so that's our criteria, and we're going to color that, and we know it's formula, so we want to color that so that it reminds us that there's formulas there. We don't want to clear that out. All right, perfect. So what else do we want? I know we've got that. Maybe the teacher ID, right? If there's a specific teacher ID, I want to know if there's a teacher been selected. So how do we know that? Well, again, we can use a formula. If it's all teachers, there's nothing to do. So equals, because we might be filtering by teacher, equals if error, And then I'm going to say this, if it equals all teachers, let's go back into the schedule. Here, if it's equal to all teachers, then we know equals all teachers. There's no filter, all teachers. And I'll be creating a named range for that. Then what? Then obviously there's nothing, there's no, so we can just put in nothing here because we don't want anything. Otherwise, what we want to do is I want to determine the teacher ID index. In this case, we're going to indexing the teacher ID. So we already went over that teacher ID here. We're going to base it on a matching based on the teacher name. Based on the teacher name. Okay, so we can do that here, basing it on what the user has selected. Where are we matching it? We're matching it right here, the teacher name. And of course, the teacher, we're looking it up into the teacher full name right here. Teacher full name. Okay, and then we want an exact match. All right, assuming that we have, of course, teacher in there, and we have an exact match, and then I want one, which is going to be the column. Close that out with the double parentheses, and then double quotes in case there's an error. Okay, so let's update that. Obviously, if we need an if here, if not here, if we need an if here, if the schedule, right? If then if, okay, there we go. All right, if. All right, so let's take a look at that. That's what I like. Okay, it's going to show nothing. And of course, if there's a teacher been selected, then it will obviously show that teacher here. Actually, let's put that in. We need to put that in the teacher ID. So I'm going to bring that over here, drag it over here. I want to show that in the teacher ID. Let's make sure that this is automatic. It shouldn't be in the teacher name because we're filtering based on the teacher ID. So again, F4 absolute there, using that, and I'm going to bring that over here. I want it in the teacher ID, not the teacher name. Now, the reason we're matching teacher ID is because teacher names can change. I really want to focus on the teacher ID, right? So that's why. Now, we could just use a simple filter equal, but what if we change the teacher and the teacher's not exactly, if we've changed the teacher by the time we put in the teacher name here, then it won't be good. So we want to use the teacher ID, which will not change. So that's why we use teacher ID. Okay, so also for the room or location, we may be doing that as well, but we'll hold off on that. The subject, the type, we're going to need to do that. So let's add in some subjects and type as well, since we have that. All right, so let's go ahead and add the rooms in. Equals if error. And then what I want to do is I want to do if, and then based on the scheduling here, if there's rooms, if it equals all rooms, then there's nothing we can do. Equals, again, all rooms, put in the bracket, just as we have it, and then in quotation marks, then of course, then we're just going to do nothing. Otherwise, basically, I want to list whatever's in here, whatever room name is in here. There we go. That's easy. Okay, and then we can just close that up. Otherwise, if there's an error, double click. Okay, there we go. So now we've got the room location in there. We're checking on the room to make sure that if they want to filter by a single room schedule, we can now do it. Also, I want to do subject type, and then I want to do the student here. Student is going to be true. So this is simple. We just want to add in, let's do student here. It's going to be true. And then we may not need color and icon. That may not be necessary. So we don't need to filter by those. So we'll remove those. I don't need criteria based on that. Not necessary. I don't think we need to color. Okay, so now last thing I want to do is just subject and type. Again, same thing here. Equals if error. And then we're going to, this time we're basing it on the subject here. We're going to look for all subject. If this equals all subject equals, I know it's a bit repetitive, but it's really powerful. Subjects, then of course there's nothing we can do. Repetition helps. Then just leave it blank. Otherwise, list whatever is in the subjects. Okay. And if there's an error, then just double quotes. Okay, and subjects should be the same. Let's write that code in now. Equals if error, right? If, and then we're going to do subjects down here into classes. Subjects equals, and then all subjects. Then close the bracket. Then we're just going to show nothing. Otherwise, we're going to show whatever is in here. Okay. And then we'll close that. And then if there's an error, just clip it. Okay. So that's good for subjects. Same thing for type here. If error equals if error, in case there's an error, always good to do that. Then what we want to do is if, based on the subject here, looking at this particular one, we're looking on class type, types. And then if it equals all types, then we're just going to, again, leave it nothing. Otherwise, we're going to show whatever is in there, and it's going to filter by that specific class type. Okay, doing that, and then if there's an error, close it out. Okay, so that's for type, and we got type and subject done. We got formulas in there, and now we're ready. So we want our results. Now we're ready to bring our results. So I'm going to take all of this, and I'm going to copy this, which is the most important. And then what we want to do is I'll place it in a specific cell. Let's just use CA. So I'm going to shrink these up, and I'm going to place those directly in CA. Those are going to be our results. So I'm going to paste it in there. We're going to call this schedule results. all those results are going to come in. Then what we're going to do is we're just simply going to run through all the results and build the schedule based on those results because we're already set up with those results. It's going to be much easier now that we have our named range. Okay, we need to build out a few things. So what do I want to build out? I want to build out these drop-down lists here. So if we take a look inside the schedule here, we need to build in all these drop-down lists. We don't have that, so I want to build that out. So first thing, we're going to start with the students. In our students database, we're going to head over to there, and we're going to take a look inside this. Now we do have all the names here, full name, but what I want is a list that says basically all students, like here, and then adding those students in here. So what if I do that? What if I type in all students and make sure, and then we'll just call it students with all, okay? Then when we build this list, all I need to do is copy this list over to here, and then we create a named range based on this. So we have that. So let's create a named range, and then we'll build it out. So in the formulas name manager, we have students. Let's take a look at the student name sorted. We have that here, sorted, but all we need to do is just update it. Okay, so let's just copy this formula here, and I'm going to create a new one, and then we're just going to call it student names. Actually, let me just double check. I want to make sure it's somewhat similar. So we have student names. Okay, I like that. I want to keep the same format. So we'll do cancel that, and then new student, just the way we did it, names, and then let's do with all. Make it very, very clear here. And then I'm going to paste it down here, and then I'm just going to update the column. So obviously this is not the right column. We're going to focus on AB this time. So I'm going to bring this out here, and we're going to focus on, but this time, because we have a specific, we don't need this because we already have a header and it's going to be included. In other words, there's never going to be a data. It's always going to contain at least the word all students, even when we don't have it. So we can remove that, in this case B, and then this case remove the -1 and change this to AB. So we don't need the header because we have a header, and that we want that header included. That header is called all students. So even when there's no data, it's still going to return something. Click, and that's good. That's perfect. Okay, click OK. So that's called student names with all. Let's copy that and click OK. We do need VBA to help us create that list, but that's no problem. So inside our, back in our schedule here, this is getting a big here. Okay, inside our schedule here, then we can then add that, so that we're going to change that to a data validation, and then we're going to do a list type, and then we're simply going to paste that named range that we just called in. Perfect. All right, now we see we don't have any students, but we do have all students. That's exactly what I want. Let's put the names in there. So how are we going to do that? Inside the developer, Visual Basic, we have a student sort, right? We have that inside the student macros here. We have something called save update down here, sort names, right? So all of this data comes into AA, and then it gets sorted. But what if I just simply, after the skip sort, after this, right, I want to simply just take AB and paste it in AB equals whatever AA is. So paste that in there, dot range, dot value, right? And then we're going to paste that in there. So basically I want to say AB3 equals dot value equals whatever is in AA3. So all we're doing is taking whatever is in AA and bringing it into AB. Running that macro there, now we check our drop-down list. Now we have a full drop-down list. Now we have all the students here. Simply, if we take a look at that inside the student database, we can now see the results of that right here inside that. So we've just basically taken them all and put it in, and now we've included all students. I want to do the same exact thing with teachers, right? Because we need all teachers, and we've done almost the same thing. So let's pull the teachers database here. If you don't know, if you have so many sheets, we don't have it yet, you can always go here into this teacher database right here and just click view the object. That'll bring you right here. I'm going to do the same exact thing with the teachers. So let's pull the teachers up. We have our sorted list here, our full name. Again, bring it into AB. In this case, we're going to call this all teachers. And then also we're going to call this teachers with all, okay? And then what I want to do is same thing. So we're going to look at the named range here and copy that. Formulas, name manager, teacher, full name, sorted. That's the one we're focused on, sorted here. Teacher, full name. And so we're going to just copy that, create a new one. In this case, we're going to call it teacher, full name, and then with all. Okay, that's fine. And we're going to make it AB and then remove the extra. So in this case, it's AE, and then AE here, and then AE here. We need to remove, we want to include the header, so we don't want to go one row down. So in this case, we're just going to keep it blank. Okay, tab over that, tab out of it, make sure it includes that, click OK, and then click close. Now, let me copy that because I'm going to need that. Click OK. Now we're done. So now I'm going to go back into the schedule here, and we're going to simply paste in that named range here as the data validation. So going into data validation, list equals, and then here we go. Here we have it, equals, and then pasting that in, teacher with full name. Okay, so as soon as we do the same thing inside the VBA, we're going to simply copy. This time it's going to be AD. So let's go ahead and look at teachers. In this case, it's teachers macros here, miscellaneous here. Bring down, let's look for teacher list. Same thing, teacher, oh, did I just skip it there? Sort names here. AD, this time we want to, of course, go to AE. So again, copying this after the sort, after the skip sort in case there's no dot value. And then we're just going to copy this and make it so AE equals AD in this card. Copy that again. AE equals AD. So paste that in your equals. So this time we're just going to change it to AE, and then I'm going to run the macro so that the teachers get loaded in. There we go. That's what I want. AE, running that macro, taking a look at the database. All teachers now shows teachers. Good. That's perfect what I want. So, and then if we take a look in here, and then we add in a student here, right here, what we can do is go back inside our enrolled student database here and double check here, actually inside our lessons database, sorry about that, and we check to make sure. Now we see we have the teacher ID here. That's what I want. We have it's probably going to be false, right? So we have false. We don't have the student here. That's what I want. So notice they changed automatically based on the student because the student's been selected. If I go back to class, the schedule here, and I change those back to all, here, let's go to all students up here because I want to show all the students. This is going to be really helpful if you want to send the specific student a day view, a week view, or a month view. You can email that to the student and just filter out a single student or a single teacher. You can send the teacher schedule. It's going to be very, very helpful. So that's why we do it. Or you want to set a specific room. So we can do that with all rooms, subject, class type. It's going to be a little bit easier for these three. Those named ranges are located in the admin. So let's go into the admin and then go back down here. So we want to look at these specific classes and lessons. So basically, I want to take these and I want to add all rooms, all subjects, or all types to that. So just these three, not all attendance status. So I'm going to basically copy this here. And I'm going to go all the way down somewhere where we don't. Let's just paste it down here. We don't need this. And I'm going to paste the links in here. So that means all the data is going to be there. Now, I don't want to show those zeros in the list, so I'm going to go into File, Options, and then go into Advanced, and I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to look for this option right here, Show Zero in Cells, and I'm going to remove that and click OK. So I don't want to show that, but what I do want to do is I want to add all rooms to this, all rooms. And the reason is they're linked, so now that any changes above will be, in this case, all subjects, and then, of course, in this case, all class type. We'll just do all types. Better do all class. All types, okay? That's fine, all types. So now what we need to do is just create named range similar to these, but starting down on row 48. Row 48 is where we're going to start it on. So all we need to do again is just go into our formulas, name manager, and then we have something called, let's say, a class. We have type, I think it's just type here. A room, let's go room first. Rooms, we have that here. I'm going to copy that here, and I'm going to do new, and we'll just call it rooms with all, okay? Pasting it down here, of course, our starting row is going to be different. Our starting row is going to be 48, right? 48. And we're not going to do, again, we're not going to do one row down because we includes a header there. And I'm going to change this again to 48, not 8. And also, we're going to remove that one row down, okay? There we go. And of course, we need to change this also, right? No longer, it's not going to be 827. So we need to count. Actually, what we can do is we can count the current ones. I like that better. We're counting the existing data. Let's paste that in here again. Let's do that. So starting in row 48, but keeping the data here. So this is fine. In this case, we're just going to use it 8. Let's take a look at that. Keeping that there. I think that'll be fine. So all we do is keep the count, and then we just need to, of course, remove this one here because we don't want to add that one in there. Tabbing it over, that's perfect. You see that? So we're counting the original, but we're starting it at 48. That's all we need to do. So copying that, we can use that and then just change the column or change it up. Okay, so we have that. What about for subjects? So rooms with all. Okay, now what do we want subjects? So let's take a look in the subjects here. Tabbing it over, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to do new. In this case, we're going to call it subject with all, or I should keep consistent, with all. I should do that with all, make it more clear. I should change the other one too. So I'm going to paste that in there. Again, we're starting in this case 48, right? And we're subtracting. We don't want it to go there. So tab that, tab out again, make sure there's, and then also we can remove this one. We don't need to start there. Okay, let's take a look at that here. perfect. That's exactly what I want. Notice it contains all. Okay, good. So now we have just one more to do, and I want to update this one because I used a different. So rooms with, I'm going to just change this one because I want it consistent. Make sure instead of wall, with all. I think that's better. Okay, so last one we have to do, of course, is the type, or class type, I believe it is. Class type right here, class type. Okay, so I'm going to copy this one. New, in this case, class type with all. Pasting it down here again, keeping the columns, getting rid of this one, and we're going to include the headers this time, and this -1, and then starting out at 48 here. So that worked out nicely. Okay, so tabbing it over, make sure that it encompasses all the data, which it does. Clicking OK. All right, we're good to go. Close that. Now all we need to do is just save our work and apply those named ranges into the data validation on our schedules. So we've got rooms with all rooms. Again, data validation here, right? Adding it, and if you're not sure, if we don't remember the name, of course we can also use F3. That's going to help us. F3, of course, it's rooms, right, with all, right? This one right here, rooms with all. Click OK, and that's going to add it in. We want to do the same thing with subject, and then data validation here, and then list here, and then equals, and then we can do F3 to make sure subject, and then with all right here. Click OK. We're good to go, making sure that it has all subjects. Perfect. Last thing is with type. So again, data validation, and then listing it here, and then locate it in F3 to make sure we've got it right. And then we're going to call this, in this case, class type, all the way down here with all. Okay, good. Now we've got all of them in. And view by, right? What do I want to view? I want to view by teacher, I want to view by room, and I want to view probably by subject. So we can just write that in. Let's do class type. I think class type makes a little more sense, although you probably wouldn't use the third one so much. So we'll just write those data validations in. So we want to view by teacher, we want to view by room, and we also want to view by, let's say, class type. And so basically when we click OK, so we have those three options. So that's the teachers are gonna show up here. This is gonna be for the day view. I'm not sure about the month view. The week view, a little bit difficult to squeeze all that into room. So otherwise we're going to show rooms here if we select room, and likewise we're going to show specific class types here. Morning, maybe you only want to show the morning, so or something like that. Whatever you decide the class types are. You can add to this. You could probably put subject in here. I'll show you ways. It's very easy to do. So we'll go through the code very soon. Okay, there's a little bit more that I want to add in right here. Notice I have the class name, the start, right? If I click here, that means I want to place this class name, the data, right, whatever the class name is, I want to paste it in that shape, right? So how are we going to do that? Well, what I want to do is I want to put that data right in here. So I want to put the data probably in, let's say, column C. So we're going to put in let's just call this class data values, class data values. So what I need is a value for each one of these. I need to know the class name, I need to know the start, I need to know all of this data. So as soon as I put in a class ID, or put in a lesson ID, in fact, a lesson ID, I want that to be calculated. Now that we have the lesson ID, we can look up the class ID, right? We know that because it's based on there. So all we need to do is run that. So let's add that in, then we can add this information in. So equals if error, right? And then again, in this case, we're going to index. That's why we have this lesson class ID, lesson. We got to add that in, lesson ID, in this case class ID. I'm going to add that in, doesn't exist yet, ID, comma, and then basically what I want to do is I want to look up whatever the row is here, in this case B11 and -3, okay, comma, and then of course if there's, close parentheses, if there's an error, which there will be right now, of course, then we're going to simply add it. But the reason there's an error is because I want to create this right here, this named range here. So I'm going to copy that here, lesson class ID, I can remember that. Okay, so that's what I want to do. I want to know the row. So what am I looking up? Your formula missing parentheses. Okay, we need to end this, comma 1. There we go. Okay, so now we've got that. So let's put that in. Let's put that named range in there. Lesson class ID. That's the one I want. So it's going to be right here, the lesson database. I want this class ID. So let's put that in. It's going to be based on the lesson in here. So let's do that. Formulas name manager, and it's going to be based similar to the lesson ID, of course, lesson ID here based on this, but I'm going to copy this new lesson, in this case class ID, the same one we did. And all I need to do is change the column here based on column C. This is going to be based on column C. Now we've got it. Okay, click OK, and click close. So what it's going to do is look it up. It's going to find that, and it's going to let us know what row it's on. So we've already done it. So now inside the schedules, it's going to show 1. So the class ID is 1. So I know that class ID, and I also want to know the class database row. What row is this class located on, right? I want to know, what do I mean by that? Inside the class database, where, in this case it's 4, where is class ID 1? Because I'm going to have to look up all this class information. So I need to know what row it's on. So we can do that. So we can just use a little bit of a formula to do that. So we can do that with equals, in this case, if error. And then what we're going to do is simply run match. I'm going to match it based on what is in B7. I'm looking up what's in B7, and I'm looking it up under the class ID. So it's going to be found here under the class ID. I want an exact match here, so I'm going to put in 0. And then I also want to add 3 because I want to know that row since we're using the index. And then if there's an error, double quotes if there's an error. Okay, so what that's going to do is going to tell me the class database rows on row 4, that database row for classes on 1. So if I change, so all we need to do, everything's automated except this lesson ID. If we change it to 5, everything else changes. Obviously it's the same class, right? But if we choose a different class, so this didn't change. And why is that? Because if we notice, it's still 1. But if we change it to, let's say 13, right, we're going to know, or the ID is 13. So we go into the schedule here and we change this one, this class ID, lesson ID, all the way to 13. It updates all the class information. Now we know that this ID 3 and is located on row 6. So we go into the classes database, right? It's all that class information is located on row 6, class ID 6. So I can pull in all the information because I want to extract all that class information and I want to place it directly inside all this. So I'm going to put it all the way in here. All the way. So let's color this a little bit differently so we can get a good look at it and we can see exactly what we're going to be doing on that. Color it a nice purple. And then, okay, so let's bring it out and then we'll do this a little bit darker. So that's the class information, right? I need that because what I want to do is I want to populate that specific shape with any and all class data. Whatever the user has selected here under data, I want to add into that. So the first thing is, of course, we need the class name. That's equal. We already have it here, the class name. So basically, if they select data, we're going to take this class name, we're going to put it inside that shape. I also want to know the start time. So what if we do the start time? So what is that start time? It's very easy when we have it. We're just going to index the lesson start time and make sure that we put that in. Let's take a look in here. I want to make sure that I don't think I have that. In few more named ranges that I want, lesson database, I've got the start time and the duration here. So let's add those into our named ranges. So formulas, name manager, again, we need to add more lesson here. Lesson, and then we have class ID. So I'm going to copy this. We always want to copy the ID, the original one. And then we're going to put lesson, okay, start time. We're going to, in fact, remember, I'm looking this up for the specific lesson because we could change the start time of a lesson. It may not be the same as the class time, right? If we've changed a specific lesson time, I want to look it up. So this is column D, that is our start time. Okay, and it's not formatted, which is fine. We don't need it formatted here. I'll probably want the lesson duration too. So lesson, and then duration, we're going to keep that inside here, duration. And then I want to put in that duration is located in column E. So we want to keep that up. Also, again, I want to know the teacher. I want to know that specific teacher. So we need to know that. Click OK and tab out. Make sure that it's covered our duration. New lesson teacher. Lesson teacher. All this is important because I want to look it up. If we could possibly change a teacher on the lesson, right? If I change a specific teacher for a lesson, I want that teacher to show up, not necessarily the class. Teacher's located in F, okay? So click OK. And then also the room, again, rooms can change too. So new and then lesson room. What specific room is that lesson located in? That's going to be located in column H. So we just update this to H. And then tab out. We always check our work to make sure that we've got to click OK. I think we also need probably lesson notes. They're specific to a lesson notes here. And then tab over here. So notes are located inside J. So it's nice to have a specific lesson. We have class notes and we have also lesson notes. Both of them are going to be helpful. We may update that. So we may need that as well. So that's going to be located in J. All right, let's take a look at that and see if we've got everything covered. All right, we are good. We're going to close that out. Now I'm just going to bring that information inside our schedule right here. So again, we have the start time. We're going to equals, we know the row. So all we really need to do is simply just wrap it in if error equals if error. And then I'm just going to use a index, and we're going to index, in this case, we're going to index the lesson start time, which we have already created. Here's all our named ranges, start time. It's easier when we use those. And we're going to, of course, we've already got the row here, so all we need to do is locate it on B11. Here's our lesson database row. We've got it here. Okay, make that absolute. And then, of course, I want to in this case, a 1, right? We want to index the column 1, and then if there's an error. Okay, so that's going to, and now, of course, the start time, let's go ahead and format that. I want to make sure that we're formatting that inside our home, and then what we'll do is we'll add that format, basically the same time format that we've been doing, the same one we did. So we'll do timer. We did a custom one down here, which is helpful. This one I'll use here. That's the same time, so 9:15. All right, and now what I want to do is I want to put the duration. Notice we're using duration because it's here, right? So I want to put this. I'm going to use VB. I'm going to run through all these. If there's a check mark here, then I'm going to place it directly in here. Okay, so the next thing we need is the duration. So all I really need to do is just copy this and just update the formula with the named range for not less than start time, but in this case less than duration. So here, putting that duration here, that's going to get us the duration. We're going to format that just as we have the other ones. In this case, we're going to format that with just the hours here. This time and this specific one is the one we're using. Okay, so that's a good. The lesson duration, 2 hours for the lesson. All right, next up, I want the teacher. So again, pasting that in here, not the start time, in this case, the lesson. The teachers that have been assigned to that specific. And then I want to base the subject on the class. This is based on the class database. So equals if error, right? We're going to index. And then what are we going to index? In this case, I want to do the class subject. Class subject here, all the way down here. And then you're going to base it, of course, on what is the row number. The row number is basically here, the database row. But since we're indexing, we need to add 3 onto that. Add 3. So we need to subtract 3. Subtract 3 onto that. Okay, so then also, of course, we need the row, the column number here, and then if there's an error. So that's going to pull in that subject. Next up, I want the class ID. Well, the class ID is going to be equal to right here. We've already got that listed here in case we want to do that. But I want to put the term in. Let's do the term. And so that's not going to change, of course. So again, equals if error, and then we're going to do the class term all the way down here. I want to know the class term. Again, actually, we can just copy this here and just change that down here. So paste down here, and then all we need to do is just instead of class subject, we're going to index the class term. So that's a bit easier. Okay, so we have that. That's why I like to use named ranges, a lot of them, because they're really easy to see inside the formulas. If I use a column, it's harder. Next up, I've got the year or level. I'm going to paste in that instead of subject. So these are why I created all those. The year, I'm going to put that down here. There's no year or level on that. That's fine. And then again, I want to do this. I don't want to show 0 in case there's nothing. All right, so I don't want to show those zeros, so I'm going to go into the file in case it's empty. Again, just like we did before, go into the advanced and then do not show 0 on these sheets. It defaults to show. And so we're going to show that right here, disable, show 0, unclick that, click OK. All right, so now we're going to, so there's no, of course, no year, room or location. That's important. We need to know the room or location. That could change based on, of course, so we want to use something based on the lesson, because it could change. That's on a per lesson basis. So I'm going to copy that. In this case, I'm going to paste in. We're going to index the lesson, in this case, room, right? Lesson room. That's what we have there. So, and also the certificate word that's based on a class. So again, that won't change. So I'm going to copy that. And we're going to based on the certificate awarded. So here I'm going to paste in. This is not the class term. In this case, it's the certificate. So I do have named range on that called class certificate. So we know what certificate award that is. And then also the class type, right? That won't change as far as lesson. That'll maintain. So in here, class, in this case, type, I think we need to update this. Notice we have class type. This is not the right one. So we have class, this should be the class type. This is not the correct one. So what do I mean by that? I think that's not. Let's go into classes. I should rename it. It gets a little bit naming. So we have a type here, class type here, and we also have a class type in here. Remember, we have a class type here. So this is a database. So I'm going to rename this one because it's not part of our database. So I want to rename this one. So we're going to go into the formulas name manager because it can be a little bit confusing. Class, we'll just call it class list type. I think we should call that there. So notice we have all these. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to call this class list type, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other one, the with all. So I think that's important. So again, notice we have class type with all. Edit that. I'm going to call that class list. It's a little bit more descriptive. Then what we need to do is we need to add one for that. So back inside the classes database here, now we don't have one for class type. So we need to add that in based on that. So again, class ID here. So there's nothing for class type here. So it's a little bit more descriptive. Copying that. Now we can add the right name, new. In this case, class type was already there. Class type. That's the one I want to use. pasting that in, of course, it's going to be based on column O. So we're going to update that to column O. I like that a little bit better so we don't have to get confused between that. So there we go, class type. Click OK and click close. Okay, we'll double check our named ranges, making sure that they updated. So this needs to have updated, which it did. That's what I want. So, all right, good to go. So now what we want to do is class type. So notice this changed to class list type, which is of course not right. We want class type on this. Type. Okay, good. That's what I want. So notice the change. Okay, good. Now I want to know how many enrolled. That's easy. All right, we have inside the enrolled student database, we have a class ID here. So for example, I know that inside this class ID, there's 3 students enrolled in class 1. So all we need to do is use the class ID enrolled class ID. That's what I'm looking for. So we can use a COUNTIF for that. So back into the schedule equals if error, and then we're going to basically use a COUNTIF. And then what is enrolled? It's going to be enrolled class ID. If that class ID is going to be equal to this class ID right here, that is all we need. And then also we just need to, if there's an error, here. So we know there's 3 enrolled in class ID. So let's take a look at that. And we have here three different students enrolled in this class. That's perfect. That's what I want. Okay. All right. Now what we need the class notes. Again, we're going to use this. That's easy. We just need to index the class information here. So we have it up here inside here, the class, copy this one, and then just change it up to notes, change the named range, paste that in here. We're going to focus on class notes, not the subject. So just copy this here, and then we'll do class notes in here. So that's one we have. And then the last, I want the class icon here. So I do have that in named range. That's going to help us. If we need to display that icon, I want to show what that name is in there. This one we don't have it, but the class ID, I believe we have it in, let's say, okay, this one we do. Notice we have a English PNG. So when I need to display that icon, I need to know exactly the icon, and I can pull it up with the name. All right, perfect. Now we're ready to do scheduling. There's a little bit more that I want to do, but right now I just want to list here, put some spacer in here. I want to know all the students. So if we're enrolling students here, we're starting it here. I want to know their student, the database row of where they're enrolled. Remember, we have the enrolled students are here. Their row, this is enrolled. You know, David is in the math class here and here. So I want to put that row inside here. So we're just going to put a spacer in there. We won't use it just yet, but probably not today because we're running wide. But I want to put it right here. So we're going to start it out in row 6 and 7 here, and then I'm just going to merge and center this. I'm put enrolled database row. Okay, and then I'll merge and center that, and then we can wrap the text on that. We've already merged and center. So basically, when I load those students in, I'm also going to load the row that there's. That way, if there's any changes or anything that we add a score, we know where to add it on. Whether their attendance or score, we know we can add it because we have the enrolled student database. We can then add it on here. We can create more, and we can put it all information. So we know the information we can add onto that. So it's going to be really helpful knowing that row. Okay, or for some reason they're absent, so we can put all of the attendance status and the scores and the test assigned here inside the database. Inside they're enrolled, so we can have the information. Next up, so what I want to do is just going to copy this, and going to basically for all the students. So we'll just copy this all the way down here. However many, what would we say, 100 or something? 102, I think we're going down here. Keep it the same. That way we have 102 students, and then just going to, but that doesn't, the formatting is not so important. This is all going to be hidden. Remember, these first 4 columns are going to be hidden, but we're going to track it through there, and it's going to be based on this. So we want to start our first row based on the first student, which is going to be row. All right, great. Now we're ready to build out the scheduling feature. The first thing I want to do is insert a sample shape. I'm going to use a square. This sample shape is going to be what's going to be used to create all of the scheduling shapes, and we'll eventually have drag and drop. So each class will be representative on here. So let's do a picture fill of this. I want to give it a default fill, and then we'll do no outline on this, no specific outline. And also I want to give it a text. So let's just call this sample. And then I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. We might have a lot of text, so I'm just going to change this to 10. And then that's good. All right, I like that. All right, well, since we're using white font, let's go a little bit darker on the fill there because we're using white. And also what I want to do is I want to give this a specific name, a very specific name. So we're going to call this sample. And this is this. We're going to be duplicating this lesson and then shape. I'm not going to spell out lesson completely. Sample lesson shape. So this is the shape that we're going to duplicate each time a new class is created. So once we have that, now we're ready to write some code. We can actually write the code that's going to help us. So we can close this. So basically what I want to do is I want to determine, are we sorting by rooms or teachers? Then we need to find the teacher if there's a teacher assigned. And then we need to place it at the appropriate time. We need to make it how high based on the duration. And we need to make sure that all the times are correct. So we can write write some code. So let's do that right now inside the developer, and we're ready to write. So we have this called schedule day view right here. So we're going to go back into the schedule here, day view, and we're going to write the macro. So we're going to do that here. Sub, in this case, schedule day view, and then we'll call it refresh, day view refresh, because that's going to refresh the day view. So the first thing we do need some variables on that. So we're going to mention the last row as long. Also, I want to know the last results row because we're running an advanced filter. Last result. Oh, let's see if I can get this right. Result row as long. Usually results or results long. No S, remember, Randy. And then results row. We need to loop through all the result rows. So I want to as long. So I want that as a variable. Also, I want the schedule row. I need to know what row on the schedule we're going to be placing that. And I also want to know the schedule column. What column are we going to be replacing that as long? Okay, so next up I want to know the schedule column as long. Schedule column as long. And also I want to know the duration. How many rows? So duration rows as long, and also the detail row. We're going to loop through. Remember those details? We need to loop through those. The detail row as long. Okay, so that's it for our long variables. We had a few more based on the teacher, actually. Dimension the teacher row as long, so we need to find that. The teacher row as long, and also the teacher last teacher row. We're going to have to loop through all the teachers in case we need that. Last teacher row as long, and the last type, right? If we're going to looping through all the types, we need to know the types. Last type row as long. And also what we want to do is, let's say the type row, so we need the type row as long, because we might be looping through types, we might be looping through teachers, or we might be looping through rooms as well. So we need to add that in. So let's do that. The last room, let's capitalize this so it's consistent here, row, and then the last room, let's call it room row as long, and then the room row as long, because if we're viewing by rooms, we need to loop through all the rooms. Okay, so once we have that, we also need to know the view by as a string. Dimension the view by. What is that? Room, is it a type or is it teacher? View by as a string, so that's going to be the string, so we need to know that. Also the room as a string, room as string. And also I want to know the class type as a string, class type as string, because those are going to be variables. And then also the lesson color. What is the color of that lesson? We need to color it based on that lesson color as a string. And then the lesson icon as a string. That's the name to that lesson icon as a string. We have that icon name that we're going to be. Okay, so I also want to work with shapes, so we're going to dimension the lesson shape. Let's do this, shape as a shape. And also the start date, dimension the lesson start as a date, right? As a date. Also on duration is double, so dim date is double. Dimension in this case the duration, dim duration as double, because that's going to be a decimal. Duration as double. Okay, so we need that. And also we need the lesson schedule interval as double. So what is that interval? Remember, interval is 15, 10 minutes. That's a double. So we'll call that schedule interval as double. Okay, double. Okay, there we go. Schedule, I spelled that wrong. Let's double check that. Schedule, type in 2000, schedule interval as double. Okay, so that's pretty much it for now for the name ranges. So the first thing what I want to do is when I'm refreshing it, any shapes that are existing classes, I'm going to clear them all out. So I'm going to loop through that sheet. I'm going to look for a specific shape type, and we're going to delete those, right? The first thing I want to do is delete them. So let's do that. Clear all existing lesson shapes. So we can do that with a loop for each lesson shape in, let's notate the screen here, schedule dot shapes. Okay, so then next lesson shape. Okay, so we're going to loop through all those. I want to know if it contains a specific type of text in the name of that shape. If in string, in this case lesson shape dot name, I'm going to look for something called lesson shape. So basically I'm going to put this inside that. Now keep in mind that our sample cannot have those texts. I don't want to delete our sample. So notice that our sample doesn't have that specific text, right? It's abbreviated. Very important. You don't want to delete that sample. We need that sample to create the others. So lesson shape in this case is greater than 0, then basically delete that shape. Lesson shape dot delete. Okay, we're deleting that shape. No need for that. Okay, so that's it. That's all we do to clear those out. So once they're cleared out, we can focus on, most of the work is going to be on the lesson database, because that's where we have to run our advanced filter. So with lesson database. Okay, so if you spelled it wrong here, notice it's not coming up. Lessons database. There we go. So it's lessons in this case. Okay, so what are we going to do? The first thing I want to determine is the last row. What is the last row? Last row. And that's going to be for base of them, because we're going to have to, again, run an advanced filter. So we need to know the last row of our lessons database. If the last row is less than 4, then we can't move forward, then exit sub. That means there's no current lessons, nothing to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, remember we mentioned that we need to paste down those formulas. Let's go into our lesson database. We have our formulas up here. We've determined the last row. So what I want to do is I want to copy these formulas. I want to paste them in all of them. So every single one. So let's do that right now inside the code. So the first thing we're going to do is just run a copy. So dot range, let's bring this down so we can see both here. And then we'll bring this up, okay? And then back into the code we go. Let's take a look at this. So the lesson dot range, in this case, it's going to be L1 through P1. L1 through P1 dot copy. We're going to copy that, copy formulas. And now I want to paste them in. Where do I want to paste them in? And all the way between L4 and P in the last row. So dot range, L4 through P and the last row, It's not going to be value. We're going to do paste special, paste formula, paste special. And then what do we want to do? Paste formula. So we're going to look down here under formulas, and that's the one I want to do. Paste those formulas down there. Okay, so now we're just going to remove the application, remove the dancing ants application dot cut copy mode equals false. Okay, so we've done that. Now we're ready to move on. Now we've pasted down all those formulas, so we have the data. Now we're ready to run our advanced filter. So we can do that. I'm just going to automate it with a little bit with an auto hotkey there, and we can bring this here. We don't need that. And then what I want to do is we're going to make sure to include the headers. Our headers are located A3 all the way through P, A3 all the way through P. So let's write that in here. A3 all the way through P, and the last row, make sure we got the variable right, which is the last row, correct. I want to, our criteria, where's our criteria located? It's located right here. Our criteria is here. Let's merge instead of that and make it look a little bit better here, and then just give it a color so we can clearly define our criteria. Nope, let's do green. Okay, so we have our, so our criteria is going to be all the way from BA2 all the way through BO3, BA2 through BO2. So let's run that inside that criteria. BA, we'll call this BA2 through BO and then 3, BO3. That's our criteria, but where's our results are going to, our results are going to be CA2 all the way through, I believe, CO or CP. Let's pull that in. CO, CP2, right? Our results are going to come here, CA through CP. So we can write that in. So we're ready to have our advanced row, CA through CP to CP. Unique equals true. Okay, so now we need the last result row. The last result row is going to be equal to, we're going to base that on CA. That's the lesson ID that's required. So if for some reason the last result row is less than 3, then exit the sub. If the last result row is less than 3, then exit sub. Nothing we can do if we don't have any data. Okay, so assuming that we do have data, we can then run a loop. So we're going to, first of all, I want to set the view by. I want to know what the view by is. So, because that's going to help us. How are we going to view this inside the schedule? View by is located right here. We're going to set it to, let's say, room or something. But basically what we want to do is locate, or we can set it by teacher. So either way, it's going to be fine. So let's do, let's start out with room. And then what we're going to do is see J11 is going to be located. I'm going to put that into a variable. So view by is equal to schedule. We need to specify the sheet. Dot range J11. J11 is where we're located because we need to know how to populate. First thing I want to do is I want to populate those headers. Am I going to populate them by rooms? Am I going to populate them? I need to populate all of these. So how do we do that? We're going to run a loop. But what are we going to start that loop? We're going to start it out in column 16. And we're going to go all the way to column, in this case, we're going to go all the way to column 54. Okay, so that's how we're going to run that loop. 16 to 54, we need to run a loop. So let's do that right now. But before we do that, we need to make sure that we actually have a specific type. In case if they've left it blank, it's going to create a problem for me. So let's make sure that if view by is equal to empty, or we can use double quotes either way, then we need to let you use message box, please select a view by type. Exit sub, nothing we can do if they don't have a type. Okay, assuming that we do, now what we can do is run that. But the first thing what I want to do is we'll use if. We could use select case on this, but we'll use if in this case, but either one would work. if view by equals teacher, then what we want to do is then let's just then do something, right? And if. Okay, so what are we going to do? So in this case, we're going to put in a note. It's called on teacher type. In this case, I want to loop through all the teachers, right? And I want to put all those teachers in there. So first of all, let's set the last teacher row. We define that up here. Let's put it in small, make sure we've got the variable right. That's right. Okay, so the last teacher row is going to be equal to where? Based on that, we need to look in there. And if we see here, go back into the teacher database right inside here, we're going to base it on AD, right? So I want to know AD. Here we only have 2 teachers. I want the last row based on AD. So let's pull that up right now. So the last teacher row is equal to, in this case, teacher database, setting that to teacher database, and then we want to make sure it's going to be AD. So, okay, so now we have it. So now if the last, let's make sure that we have the, if the last teacher row is less than 3, then let these know, message box, there are no current teachers, nothing to loop through. Exit sub. Okay, so we've got that there. So that's it, the view by teacher. So now what I want to do is loop through all the teachers. So, okay, how do we do that? First thing I want to do is set a limit to 20. Remember, we're limiting the columns here. To remember that on the schedule, we have a limit, right? We're not going on forever. I think we limited it to 20 teachers. Let's bring this teacher database over here and bring it on the schedule. So the schedule, if we're looking at right, we've got 20 columns, right? So it's going to be 40, but really 20 because we got 2 per teacher. So if we look here, we see that we've got 40 columns here. So 40 columns here, we need to limit the teachers to 20, right? So if the teachers are greater than 20, then just show the first 20. Of course, in yours, you can show more if you want to, but let's do that here inside the code to make sure that we have just that. So if the last teacher row, and how do we get 20? Last teacher row is greater than, in this case, 22, then limit to 20. Why 22? Well, let's take a look inside the code, inside the teacher database. Right, we're going to start out in 3, and so we know we've got 20, right? Maximum 20, so we want 22 as our last row. If it's greater than 20, just set the limit to 22 for the last row because we have a limited number of columns. So then last teacher row equals 22. Set limit to 20 columns on schedule. Okay, so now that we have that, we can then loop through all those teachers. So we're ready to go. And then we can run our loop. So the first thing what we want to do is to run that loop. Remember, from the columns we said we're going to do step 2. So every 2 columns we're going to add that teacher name in. But we also don't know, there could have been some data in there before. So why don't we clear that out? Let's clear it out right here. So inside here, I want to run a loop for schedule column is going to be equal from 16 to 54 to 54. Okay, step 2, right? Every 2 columns, step 2, and then we'll do next schedule column. Okay, so what are we going to do? If it equals blank, then basically what I want to do is clear the header. If the schedule, and then we'll put in schedule dot cells. What is the row? The row here, let's take a look at the row. I believe it's row 2. That's what we're going to be focused on, row 2. This one here. And the column, we're going to clear it out. I want to make sure to clear it out because we're going to be changing that. So in this case, 2 based on the schedule column, then the value does not equal empty, then clear it out. Does not equal empty, then, right, we don't want to make the change if it's empty with nothing, we then clear it out. So how do we do that? All we just need to do is just copy this and use clear contents. Copy this, then clear those contents, dot clear contents. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we're just going to loop through it, clearing out those. Step 2, not step 1. Not going to be an issue. It's going to erase all the time, right? I don't want to erase the time, just the room or whatever teacher, whatever's here. So we've cleared out the headers, but we're leaving the time in there. Okay. All right. So 16 to 54, step 2. Okay. So now that we've cleared out the headers, now that we're going to start looping through the teachers, right? I want to loop through every single teacher. For the teacher row is equal to 3 to the last teacher row. And then, okay, so once we loop that, so next teacher row, I want to place those teacher names basically in the headers. Next teacher row. Okay, so where's that teacher going to located, right? It's going to be located, the schedule, we know it's going to be the schedule. Again, this, okay, place dot cells. We're going to place that teacher name, and of course it's going to be in row 2, but where's it going to be located? What cell? The schedule column, right? The schedule column is going to be equal to, Now, why do we do the schedule column? Let me update that before I forget. So we're going to reset the schedule column. Let me do that. Schedule column is equal to 16. Then we're going to increment it too. Schedule column equals 16. Okay, so it's going to start out at 16. Dot value is going to equal teachers database, right? The database here. Dot range, teacher database. Range, okay, where's it going to be located? AD, that's the column, and the teacher row. We're looping through all the teachers in that row. Dot value. So that's going to set teacher name. Set teacher name in those columns, right? It's going to set that teacher name in this one, in this one, in this one, however long it's going to go. Okay, so once we have those teachers' names in there, we can then continue on. So that's all we do. That's easy. That just sets the teacher's name. So don't forget to increment. Randy, don't forget. Then we need to increment that schedule column for 2. Schedule column equals the schedule column plus 2. Okay, that's important. Okay, so we've got that loop there. Now we're ready to build the schedule. So how do we do that? So let's add some more, but although we're not going to do it now. So then we're going to say if view by equals room, and then we'll leave it empty because we're just going to focus on the teacher because this is a lot. If view by equals room, then we're going to do some other things, right? Basically, we're going to loop through all the rooms. Then, right, do something else. Loop through the rooms. Not going to do that today because we're already out of time. Loop through rooms, and we're going to do the same thing if it's type, right? So we're going to on class type. So here, make sure we got the right name under class type because we set those. So view by, what do we call that? Class type. Perfect. So I'm going to just add that in, and then we know to add that in next time. If view by equals class type, then we need to loop through the class types. Then loop through the class types. Okay, so we have that here. Loop. We're just going to start out with teacher. Loop through class types. Okay, so assuming that we now have all the teachers in the header, we can then set up. So what are we going to do? We're going to run we're going to run through the results, right? We've got all of our results here inside the enrolled student data, inside the lesson database. We've got our results. So we're going to start out at 3. You're going to go all those lessons that apply within this schedule. For our purposes here, will be all those lessons that are on a specific date. We should add some more. And notice we have, let's take a look at our current schedule. We have on the day that we're focused on here, it's going to be May 2nd. So we should add some more lessons onto May 2nd, right? We have 1 here. We're going to copy this, add a few more here, and then paste, let's paste this one in here. And then make sure that they're on different teachers or different rooms or something like that. That might help. In this case, we need different teachers. So Lewis and John, and that, okay, we'll add that in here. All right, paste. We can also add, it's okay if we get duplicate data, something, that's fine. At least we have some data to go by. Okay, so continuing on inside, let's pull up the schedule and continue on. What we want to do is now loop through all of these results. Those results are located right here. I'm going to loop through starting at 3, going to the last results row. So let's set that up. It's relatively easy at this point. So for result row is going to equal 3 to last result row, and then close our loop, next result row. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to get that lesson ID that's going to be located in CA lesson ID, making sure that I do have a name variable, and that lesson ID is going to be equal to, again, we're our dot range, in this case CA, and the lesson, the result row, and the result row. That's very important because I need to place that. It's called the lesson. Where am I going to place it? You might remember that. I'm going to place that directly in the schedule. I need to place it here because once I do that, it's going to populate everything. I'm going to place that directly inside here in B10. I want to place that B10. Everything else will populate based on that lesson ID. So moving on. So here we go. So in this case, schedule dot range B10 dot value equals the lesson ID. So it's going to populate that. And I want to make sure just to calculate that schedule, because we got a lot of formulas based on that. In case we turn off calculations, I want to make sure that we're calculating that. So now what I want to do is I want to go through, I want to know what we're going to show inside. I want to build a full string based on everything here, meaning what am I going to show inside that shape? Am I going to show the data? Am I going to show the label? Am I going to show both? So we need to do that. So we can change this to room. We don't need that. And we could just change the certificate, make it shorter, certificate, if we decide. And then, so we can show everything to start. That's a good way to check. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a loop. In this case, remember, we have the detail row all the way from 5 all the way to 18. So let's write that up right now. So we're going to say for the detail row, for detail, put it in small letters to make sure we have the variable, right? Detail row is equal to 5 to 17. Actually, we don't need the icon separate, so let's just go to 17. The icon we'll use separately in a separate instances. And so we just want to show 5 to 17, okay? Next detail row. So close that loop out. So what are we going to do inside this loop? So basically what I want to know is if there's a check mark here, then we need to show the data. If there's a check mark here, we need to show the label. So let's write that in right now. And we need to build out a string for that so we can place that string inside our box. So in this case, if the schedule dot range G and the detail row dot value is equal to, what is that? That's character 252. Then the lesson text is equal to whatever's lesson text and the schedule, right? What is it in the schedule? Where is that label located? It's located directly inside H, right? Schedule dot range H and the detail row. That's the detail row. So that's the label they've chosen, dot value. So that's it. So in case so now all we need to do is just kind of copy that and then make a paste. So now what I want to do, so that's for the label, but what about the data? So if G, so our located in F. Now our data is located in F. If they've opted to show the data, then I'm going to show whatever's in C. If they've opted in. So that's the data. But I want to add a little bit more to that. I just want to show, I want to do and I want to put a colon and a space there. Colon and a space so that we can separate the label from the data. Okay, but so that's how we do it. Okay, so now if F, then we're going to show what's in C. Okay, so this is the label and this is the data. Okay, so now that we have that, but what I want to know is, are we going to, if either one of these are checked, then we need to go to a new line. So I want to check if either one of these the user has opted, then I want to put everything else on a new line. So let's do that now. So if schedule G does not equal empty, or in this case F, if F or G does not equal empty, then go to new line. Then what we want to do is we want to, the lesson text is going to equal a brand new line. Then lesson text is going to equal the lesson text and a new line. So we're going to use VBCR and the new line. So we're going to, if either one of those contain a value, we're going to go to a brand new line. That way everything's there. Or let's see, we don't need this if there. Okay, so there, and then we need to put the then in. We don't need this and sign here. Okay, so now we've got it. All right, so that's all we need to do to build out the text. So that's going to build out the text for our shape. So we've gone through all the detail. If the user has checked it, we're going to add it. So now what we can do is we can continue to build out. So now what I want to do is determine which column. Now I need to know which column are we going to place it in. I want to know, we have to find it. If it's teacher, right, then I need to find the teacher and determine what place it in. So we need to do another. We can use, in this case, we can use select case. We'll show you both methods. It's fine. So, okay, let's clear this out. Next result, and then go down here. So cases, let's do this. Select case. In this case, we're going to do view by, right? So I want to know what determine column. We need to determine the column. And we'll just use, in this case, we'll do just, and then end select all the way down here, and then end select. Okay, close out that. And then, so what are we going to do? Case is equal to, in this case, teacher, which is what we're doing. Then what do I want to do? Then I want to determine the row. The teacher, where's the teacher located? First of all, I want to get the teacher in our results. So, of course, that's going to be located right here in CF. Now, keep this in mind. What I may do is I may add a formula and then populate that teacher based on the teacher ID. So it's something, because if they change the teacher name, but for now, we're running out of time. But keep that in mind. So we may want to populate that with a formula. So whatever the current name is based on, but right now we're just going to go with CF. So it's located, our teacher is located in column CF. So in this case, the teacher, make sure I have a variable on that teacher, is equal to dot range CF, and of course the result, and the result row. Okay, so we got, that's the teacher full name. So teacher full name. Now what I want to do is I want to determine the column. So notice we don't have a variable on that. Should have been teacher. So let me make sure that up there. I should have a variable on that. So it's easy to do that string. Let's put that. I thought I had one, but okay. Teacher. So that's why we use undercase. So now it's going to capitalize as a string. We need that. Okay, so continuing down, easy to check our errors. So now it's capitalized. So that's an easy way to do it. Okay, so the schedule column is going to be equal to, here's what we're going to determine, the schedule dot range And then basically I want to search that range. So what are we searching? We're going to search that schedule, the entire range. I'm looking for that teacher inside. So I'm going to start with P2, and I'm going to go all the way to the last one, BB2. So that's the row that I want to search. I'm looking for that teacher name. That's going to determine the column. So P2 through BB2, dot find. I want to find that teacher, not fill down. Dot find. I want to find that teacher. So what am I finding? I'm finding the teacher. Okay. And what do I want from that? Well, I want the column of that. I want to know the column. That's it. That's all we need to do. Class type is going to be very, very similar, so we can just copy that. So here we got, let's see, select case. Let's put this in right here. Copy this, although we're not going to use it today. Teacher and then teacher. So in this case, we're going to put room, and we're going to room, and then we're going to use a variable. I think we need variables for room as well. And we also need variables for, okay, room type. So room, and then we do have, in this case, class type also. Oh, we do have one for room, and check for class type, Okay, check on that. Okay, we got that. Okay, so in this case, class type. So now we have class type. If it's class type, let's separate those so we can see them a little bit more clearly. And we go. So in this case, we're going to focus on, in this case, room. We're going to look for the room. And in this case, we're going to look for the class type. Although we haven't added the code that's going to actually add those in. We add rooms here, and we'll add them in here, but we're kind of running out of time. Of course, we started running out of time about 90 minutes ago, but that's another story. Okay, so class type is going to be, well, this case, we're going to actually look for the class type, and in this case we're going to actually look for the room, so we're going to put those variables in there. Okay, so that's going to help us out when we do add that in. And then next up, all we want to do is really need to just add in the schedule row. So we need to determine the row. So we're end select. We've done all the work for that, getting out of that end select. So now what we want to do is I want to determine the row. What is that row going to be based on? Well, it's based on this. Schedule row is going to be equal to, I want the lesson start, right? You want to look at that lesson start, and it's going to be minus with the start time, minus the start time. Remember, we have that in a variable, start time, right? Making sure start time, and then I want to divide that by the interval plus 3, and I'll show you what that means. Interval, again, we have that also inside a variable, interval. And then what I want to do is add 3. Why do I want to add 3? Well, that's because our rows, our first one starts on row 3, so we need to add 3. So basically, if it's scheduled for 9 o'clock, right, and I want to know what row, so we're going to subtract the start time, which is going to give us 1 hour. So if we're 1 hour and we are specifically our interval is 15 minutes, that's going to know to start 4 rows. So we know to start it. So if we add 3, it's going to know to start on 9. I'm going to say that again because it's confusing. If our lesson time is 9 and our start time for the schedule is 8, if I subtract, we're going to get 1 hour. If I take that 1 hour and I divide it by the intervals, which is 15, that's going to get us 4. If I take 3 and plus 4, it's going to get us 7. That's how we get the row 7. Okay, so that's relatively simple. Okay, so that's going to get us the schedule row. And next up, what I also want after the schedule row, I want to know the duration. What's the duration of that? Because I need to know how big to make that. Duration is going to be equal to, again, we're going to focus on where's our duration is located inside the lesson database. The results are going to come here into CE. So we can do that. Let's just copy this one right here, it's CF, and then copy that down here. It's going to equal to, paste that in CE, and then update that. That's the duration. So once we have that duration, I want to know the number of rows to do that. So the duration rows is going to be equal to, basically we're going to round off, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the duration, which is what, and I'm going to divide that by the intervals, the interval that we set here, interval, and then also what I want to do is comma 0, right? I don't want any decimals there, so I'm going to round that off to make sure it's a whole number. There, that's going to get us our duration rows. Duration rows. So I want to know how big to make that shape. Duration, this is not duration row. Make sure I put that in there. Rows should be rows, I think. Rows. Okay, good. That we get to notice the capitalized. We got it right. All right, so continuing on, that helps prevent bugs. So we also want to know the lesson color and the lesson icon. The lesson icon, where's that going to be located? That's going to be located in our CO. CO is the icon and CP is the color. So CO is our lesson. We'll just call it class icon because it doesn't change for lesson icon. And then class icon. And then also I want the color, lesson color. What is the color of that? And that's going to be located directly in CP. So CP. And we get that and we can then color it. So CP is going to be our class color. Okay, so we've got the color for the lesson. We'll call it lesson color. So everything's consistent. Lesson color, but it's consistent based on the class, of course, and the lesson icon. Lesson icon we'll be placing next week because that's a little bit more involved. We got to group everything, but I want to at least get this much for you. So now what I want to do is I'm ready to build out. We've got everything we need. So I'm going to take our sample shape located here in our schedule, and I'm going to duplicate it. So we know the name here. It's lesson shape. I'm going to duplicate that and give it a unique name. So inside our lesson, we'll just add that in here. So inside the schedule, dot shapes, what is that shape? Lesson shape dot duplicate, and I want to give it a specific name. What name do I want to give it? I want to give it that name based on the lesson shape. Remember, equals lesson is this name right up here, the one we deleted. We want to make sure that it includes this text right here all the way at the top, which is called lesson shape. Here's what I want to do. I want to add it, but then I want to add the lesson ID on top of that so that it's unique. Equals lesson shape and of course the lesson ID here. So that's going to be it. That's our lesson shape name. So we're going to copy that, and now we're going to work with that specific. Okay, so that's it. Now we can work directly with it. Okay, so with, let's go one row up, with, and then in this case schedule dot shapes. What's the shape? Pasting that in there. We don't need the double quotes in there. And the lesson ID, okay, with this shape, we're going to do something with it. What are we going to do? And with. Well, we need to build it out and place it out. So now that we've created it, what we want to do is we want to size it accordingly, and we want to place it accordingly. So let's do that. So with the lesson, the dot left position, let's put that in here, dot left position. We want to place that directly and based on the schedule. The dot left position is going to be equal to schedule, in this case, dot cells. And then what is that? It's going to be based on the schedule row and the schedule column dot left. So that's the left position. And basically the top position is going to be very much the same. So let's put in left here, and then we'll go ahead and put in the top. So the top is going to be equal to the same thing, dot top, but we're going to add a little bit onto that. Dot top is going to be equal to schedule equals dot top, and then remove the extra equals. We don't need that. Okay, so we've got the top position, but now I want to know how big to make it. What is the width and what is the height? Well, the width is relatively easy. So the dot width is going to be equal to, let's get rid of this end width. We don't need that. It's going to be basically the width of the column. So that's what I want to, so again, I'm going to copy this. I just want to know the width of that specific column. So all we need to do is copy this and then just use it based on the width of that column, dot width. Okay, so we've got the width of that because I'm going to base it exactly on the width of the column. What about the height, right? Dot height. I want to know the height of that specific, and then that's going to be equal to, again, let's take a look at this range. It's going to be based on the schedule cells. I want to know the top to bottom. Schedule dot cells, right? It's going to be entire range, and then it's going to be the beginning of that. So what is the beginning? It's going to be that specific schedule, this particular one right here, cells dot, you can remove that additional, dot range. What is that? That's the top position in the range, the top one. Okay, so that's one cell, comma, what is the rest? Basically, it's going to be the same plus the number of rows. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it in there. So the schedule row is going to be the schedule row plus the duration rows, and then minus one, subtracting one out, minus one. So that's going to give us the height of that. So we can just close that up, and then that's the dot height, okay? All right, so we've got the height. Now what about the text, right? We want to put in that text. Let me fix that, plus the duration rows. Okay, we don't need that plus there. All right, so fix that up. Schedule rows plus the duration rows minus one, comma the schedule column. Okay, that's better. Comma schedule. Okay, so that's what we want. So now we've got it up. So now what do I want? I want the text. So dot text is going to equal what? We want the text frame. We're going to focus on that. So dot text frame. And what is that text frame? It's going to be text frame 2, and we want to do the text on that. So I want to know what text. Text range, in this case, dot text is going to equal the lesson text, right? So we know that. What about the color, right? So now now what I want to do is I want to set the color. So if I want to make sure if the lesson color, make sure lowercase that to make sure I got it right. Lesson color does not equal empty. Then what I want to do is add the color, and then we'll do that dot fill dot for color dot RGB is equal to the lesson color. So it's going to set the lesson color. Okay, very good. That's going to set. Then we just loop through each class. So let's take a look at that and see how we're doing. Okay. All right, that's going to be pretty much it. We're going to, of course, check for bugs, saving our work. We should have saved it earlier on. And now what we'll do is I think we have end width. We got too many end widths. We don't need this one here because we're inside. That was why it wasn't, IntelliSense wasn't coming up. We had an additional end width for the lesson database sheet, which is correct. End width for the shape here. That looks good. So we'll get a save again. And then what we'll do is we'll run this macro, take a look, check for bugs. If there's any sub or function, next schedule column, we don't need that G here. Again, continuing on. Taking a look, lesson ID, variable not defined. Thought we defined that lesson ID. Let's do it up here. Good, Carolyn. Lesson ID. Okay, as string. I'm going to put that as a string in this case. And then continuing on. All right, let's take a look. Variable not defined. Lesson text. That's very important. We need that, of course. We missed a lot of strings. So let's do it here. Lesson text as a string. Continuing on. And then variable not defined lesson color, that's misspelled. Should be color. Continuing on. Okay, again, dot cells, this is the argument here for this. Oops, let me get rid of that. Don't need that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at it and then resume that. And then, all right, let's take a look at the schedule here. All right, zoom on over here. All right, let's take a look at the results and take a look here, see if we got any results. We don't have any results, but let's take a look inside the data here. This for students, this should be true, right? So we got it here, J5. That's got to be absolute here, right? So F4, right? We want to make that J5 is not going to change here. Again, absolute here. So that's important. So we want to run that. Let's run it again and take a look here. Inside here, running it also. Those went to true. Good. Debug that. Let's see. Detail row equals 5 or schedule range F and detail row value equals 5. Obviously, we're missing the it does not empty here. I want to make sure that. Okay, continuing on here. Let's take a look. Type mismatch. Okay, lesson start. Okay, that's okay. Obviously, we need to add in the lesson start here, so we got to put it there. We didn't add that in. Lesson start is going to be equal to what's located in CD, so let's put that in. Lesson start's equal to, and we'll just put it in right here. Copy this. So we need to add in that start. Without that, we can't do it. Lesson start located on CD. So we're going to reset that. We got now data in here, so that's looking good. And we got 3 rows of data. That's what I want. So running that, spelled interval wrong. Interval. Okay, I hope that's correct. And then again, run that. Okay, that looks better. Now continuing on, let's take a look at the schedule and bringing it over here. We see we now have 2 scheduled. Very good. I like that. So we've got 2 appointments scheduled. This one's in black. Okay, this one's in green. We have our data. Let's take a look. All of the data is in here except we need to add the data. The data didn't come through. So let's add in that data right now because notice the labels came through, but the data didn't. The data is located in C, right? We need to make sure that data. So let's add that in. I know right where that is. It's located right here. Continuing on here, so here's our data, so we'll double check that's going to be not D but C, right? C. Run it again, make sure we get the data in here. It's very fast. Now we have our data in here, class start, we got our data, but we do want to format these. I want to format the time, and then I'm going to let you go. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take on whatever format's located in here. That's the format that I want to take on inside. So we just need to update the code here. So all we need to do, based on our data, right? So in this lesson text and format, we're going to use format here. What is the format? The format's going to be based on whatever the format of C is. So all we need to do is do comma here, add in the comma, put in that format, whatever the format is in here, dot number format. That's what I want. Close it out. Let's take a look at now. Refresh it. So it's going to take on the format of that. Okay, scrolling, we can close these filters out. Now we've got our times formatted. Now we've got our duration. All right, very, very cool. This has been incredible training. Next week, we are going to have a create. When I select on them, I want to load all the data in here. I want to be able to drag and drop. I want to be able to do a lot more. We've got a lot to cover. I can't wait. Thanks so much for sticking with me on this marathon series and training. If you like these trainings, you can go ahead and pick up the 175 workbook zip file. That's 175 of my best workbook templates. It's just $66. And that would really help me out. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for sticking with us till the end. We'll see you next week.